Chapter 2359. In the middle of nowhere, young Kai had suddenly asked her to take off her clothes in a tone that would not allow her to refute. Liu Xianyun was naturally angry and embarrassed, so she couldn't help but think the wrong way. Young Kai explained, Yarochang Jun left a mark on the jade box, so he can lock onto our position. I don't know if you have it on your clothes, but we still have to be on guard. Change into a new set of clothes. Hearing his explanation, Liu Xianyun finally understood what young Kai meant. She understood that she had misunderstood young Kai's intentions and her face immediately turned pale. She wasn't a shy little girl and immediately began to undress after knowing the whole story. Not long after, she changed into another set of clothes and burned her original set of clothes to the ground. 3,000 miles away, Yarochang Jun's figure suddenly stopped, his face ashen. Just now, he suddenly noticed that the tracing mark he had planted had disappeared. At that time in the tea house, after he took the jade box from young Kai, he directly left a mark on it. It wasn't that he could predict the future, he was just being careful. He had waited for 200 years in Marsh City and finally saw the heavenly restoration lotus, so how could he not be cautious? As it turned out, his caution allowed him to chase after young Kai for 5 days without letting go. But just now, the mark suddenly disappeared. How could Yarochang Jun not know that young Kai must have found the mark he had planted and erased it? But what he couldn't figure out was how young Kai, a trivial third-order Dao source realm, could erase his mark. The gap in strength was not fake. In an instant, Yarochang Jun was anxious and angry. He roared to the sky, "Brat! Even if I have to dig 3 feet into the ground, this king will catch you." Although the mark was gone to show him the way, Yarochang Jun was still unwilling to give up. The heavenly restoration lotus was not something that could be seen casually. Being able to see it this time was completely due to luck. If he missed this chance, he might never see it again. He secretly swore. No matter what, he had to find young Kai, tear him to pieces, and take back the heavenly restoration lotus. In the depths of the solitary void mountain range, young Kai's face was ugly. Although he had completely gotten rid of Yarochang Jun, young Kai found that his situation had not improved because he was actually lost in this damned place. After asking Liu Xianyun, she also said that she did not know how to get out of this place. She had only been in such a deep place once. Last time was completely by luck. The surrounding environment seemed to be carved from the same mold. Suddenly, Kai Yang stopped. He scanned his surroundings with a grave expression. "Senior brother, what's wrong?" Liu Xianyun asked nervously. "Maybe it's just an illusion," young Kai muttered to himself. Liu Xianyun gulped and whispered, "Brother, there is a saying in the solitary void mountain range." "What saying?" "Some people say that the solitary void mountain range is alive." Liu Xianyun's pretty face turned pale. "Alive?" Young Kai raised his brow. "En." Liu Xianyun nodded. The landscape of the solitary void mountain range changes all the time, so there has never been a map of this place. Sometimes, the landscape of a certain place changes very quickly. Sometimes, the changes are so slow that no one can detect them, but most people think that the solitary void mountain range is alive. Young Kai frowned and thought for a while before his eyes suddenly lit up. This saying may not be correct, but there is definitely some basis. "What do you mean?" Liu Xianyun looked at young Kai in confusion. Young Kai said, "Junior sister, you have always been active in the periphery of the solitary void mountain range. Do you often find good things?" "Yes," Liu Xianyun replied, "it's not just me, many people in Marsh City are like this." Young Kai nodded. Since there are so many people active in the periphery all year round, it stands to reason that the periphery should be barren. Even if there were any good things, they would have been taken away long ago, but you can often find some good things. This is also what I find strange. Liu Xianyun nodded. Liu Xianyun nodded. She had never understood why this was the case. She had come to the solitary void mountain range many times, and except for the few times when she was unlucky and didn't find anything, she would always find something useful in the periphery. But this was obviously not normal. "Brother, you mean," young Kai said, "the solitary void mountain range is always moving. Every once in a while, the earth in the depths will move to the periphery, and the spirit grasses and spirit medicines in the depths will naturally appear in the periphery. That's why there are often good things in the periphery. How do you know? Liu Xianyun was extremely surprised. She had lived in the solitary void mountain range for several years, but she had never thought of this. Yang Kai had only been here for a few days, but he had already thought of this. Yang Kai smiled slightly. It's just a guess, I don't know if it's right or not. But this guess was very likely to be true, because it perfectly explained why good things often appeared in the periphery of the solitary void mountain range. This land was alive, wriggling and rolling at a speed that ordinary people couldn't detect, and when the earth in the depths moved to the periphery, it would naturally bring out the good things. But the cultivator in the solitary void mountain range had a feeling that he didn't know the true face of this place, so he couldn't detect the changes in the solitary void mountain range at all. Hualala, at that moment, the sound of flapping wings suddenly came from all around, and then, countless birds in the dense forest took to the air, as if they had been frightened by something. Not only that, the beasts on the ground also began to panic, scurrying around like headless flies. In less than 3 breaths, the entire solitary void mountain range was boiling. What's going on? Liu Xianyun's pretty face changed as she asked in surprise. Yang Kai was also puzzled, but in the next moment, his expression suddenly changed, because he saw that the birds that had taken to the sky were all frozen in mid-air, unable to move forward no matter how they flapped their wings. It was as if there was an invisible force that was restraining them. Among those birds, there was no lack of 11th-order monster beast, and Yang Kai even saw a 12th-order monster beast comparable to the Emperor realm. Just as Yang Kai was feeling suspicious, the ground under his feet suddenly moved rapidly, causing Yang Kai to lose his footing and almost fall to the ground. At the same time, an extremely strong suction force came from deeper in the solitary void mountain range, pulling Yang Kai's body and trying to drag him there. Yang Kai's expression changed drastically, and without any explanation, he directly wrapped Liu Xianyun with his source qi and tried to use the Tao of space to escape. But under the fluctuations of the Tao of space, he was still in place. Sensing with his heart, Yang Kai cried out involuntarily, "The world principles have been shattered." The world principles in this area had been shattered by this change, and he had no way to use the Tao of space to leave this place. And in just a short while, the flow of the ground under his feet became even faster, causing Yang Kai to feel a little dizzy. Liu Xianyun was even worse off, unable to stand steadily and could only hug Yang Kai's waist. The suction force from deeper in the mountain range was even more terrifying, and even with Yang Kai's cultivation, he was unable to resist it. No matter how he urged his source qi to stabilize his body, the birds and beasts were all dragged away by the suction force and disappeared from Yang Kai's sight in the blink of an eye. Many of the weaker birds and beasts even exploded into a bloody mist. For a time, the roars of beasts and the cries of birds filled the air, and the solitary void mountain range became extremely lively. Somewhere 3,000 kilometers away, Yarrow Chang-jun's face was also filled with shock. He desperately urged his Emperor Qi to break free from the shackles of this world, but even with his cultivation, he was unable to do so and could only barely stand in place without being dragged away. The solitary void great maelstrom. Yarrow Chang-jun's face was so gloomy that it was almost dripping water. Even his rock-hard emperor heart was trembling slightly in fear. Unlike Yang Kai, who had just arrived, and Liu Xianyun, who had lived here for only a short time, Yarrow Chang-jun's research on the solitary void mountain range was extremely thorough. He knew that this damned place usually did not look dangerous, but at certain moments, it could erupt with heavenly Tao power that even the Emperor realm could not resist. At that moment, the solitary void great maelstrom would appear. The solitary void great maelstrom was definitely a natural disaster that would destroy and reshape the solitary void mountain range. Yang Kai's previous guess was correct. The solitary void mountain range was indeed constantly changing, and the terrain was constantly shifting, which was why the cultivator on the periphery could often find some good things. However, this kind of change was actually very slow and would not bring too much danger to the cultivator who came here for experience. Moreover, because the cultivator was inside the solitary void mountain range, they would generally not notice this change, and by the time they noticed it, the terrain would have already changed. However, when the speed of this change reached a certain limit, the entire solitary void mountain range would spin like a crazy top, and in the midst of this rotation, the solitary void mountain range would be reshaped. This was the solitary void Great Maelstrom. No one knew why the solitary void mountain range was like this. It was the work of heaven and earth, and Yarochang Jun had entered and exited the solitary void mountain range many times without being able to figure out anything. It was just that the solitary void Great Maelstrom appeared for a very long time, generally appearing once every few hundred to 1,000 years. As far as Yarochang Jun knew, the last time the solitary void Great Maelstrom appeared was 600 years ago. At that time, the Great Maelstrom swallowed countless cultivator who entered the solitary void mountain range, and this time would obviously be no exception. And it just so happened that he actually ran into it. Yarochang Jun hated Yang Kai in his heart. He felt that if it weren't for this brat's interference, he would not have taken the risk to enter this place and encounter such a natural disaster that he could not resist. If he was still on the periphery of the solitary void mountain range, he would definitely be able to escape with his powerful cultivation, but in order to chase after Yang Kai, he had gone deep inside. When the Great Maelstrom appeared, the deeper one went, the more terrifying the suction would be and the more difficult it would be to resist. At this moment, he was only 2,000 kilometers away from the center of the solitary void mountain range, and at this distance, he would not be able to escape. Chapter 2360. If someone could look down at the solitary void mountain range from a high altitude, they would see that the solitary void mountain range was spinning madly like a spinning top. With a certain point as the center, the entire solitary void mountain range was in the shape of a huge funnel. A powerful suction force was coming from the center, affecting all living beings in the solitary void mountain range. Countless birds and beasts were sucked into the funnel-shaped vortex, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. However, even more birds and beasts, as well as the cultivators who came here to train and search for resources, exploded into a bloody mist, not even leaving behind a corpse. Those cultivator who were lucky enough to be active in the periphery were lucky enough to escape this unforeseen event, but when they looked back, everyone's face was pale and their hearts were filled with lingering fear. Many people did not know what was going on, but some people knew that this was the famous solitary void Great Vortex. The news spread like wildfire, and soon everyone heard about the solitary void Great Vortex. While they were amazed by the heavenly way of nature, they were full of expectations. Because every time the solitary void Great Vortex appeared, the entire solitary void mountain range would be reshaped, and some of the precious treasures that were originally in the depths of the solitary void mountain range would flow to the periphery along with the changes in the landscape. In other words, when the solitary void mountain range calmed down, a large number of precious treasures would appear in the periphery, so how could they not be looking forward to this? I seem to have seen City Lord Master enter the depths of the solitary void mountain range before, but I don't know if my eyes are playing tricks on me. Yes, I saw it too. City Lord Master seems to be in a hurry, like he's chasing someone. City Lord Master is in trouble now. I don't know if he can return safely. There's not much hope. The depths of the solitary void mountain range are extremely dangerous. City Lord Master might not be safe even if he entered the Emperor realm. Now that he has encountered the solitary void Great Vortex, I'm afraid he's done for. Many cultivator gathered in the distance around the periphery of the solitary void mountain range, discussing animatedly. If Pang Guang really fell in the solitary void mountain range this time, then the forces in Marsh City would be reshuffled, which was good news for many people. For a moment, some were happy while others were sad. Everyone's mood was extremely complicated. At the same time, deep inside the solitary void mountain range, Yang Kai was protecting Liu Xianyun, struggling to resist the terrifying suction force from the center. His clothes were torn to shreds, his skin was cracked, and he was covered in blood, looking extremely miserable. He didn't know what was going on with the suction force that came from the depths. The more Yang Kai resisted, the more frightening it became. The force added to his body made him feel more and more exhausted. If it weren't for the fact that his physique was quite good, he would have most likely exploded and died just like those living beings. Senior brother, don't worry about me. Escape by yourself. Although Liu Xianyun was also trying to defend herself, but because of Yang Kai's protection, his situation was actually better than Yang Kai's. At this moment, seeing Yang Kai like this, his heart was filled with guilt. He knew that he had dragged Yang Kai down. As she spoke, she tapped her foot and was about to leave Yang Kai. Yang Kai grabbed her hand and slowly shook his head, saying in a deep voice, "Don't worry, I'll tell you when I can't hold on any longer." At this critical moment of life and death, he didn't abandon her. Liu Xianyun's heart was filled with warmth as she was extremely moved. It was easy to share riches and honor, but difficult to share trials and tribulations. It was the easiest time to see a person's heart. Liu Xianyun felt that being able to meet Yang Kai in the star boundary was the greatest fortune of her life. Without a trace, she gave up resisting and revealed a sad smile. "Senior brother, take care of yourself in the future. What are you doing?" Yang Kai's expression changed as he realized what she was doing and hurriedly shouted, "Don't give up, I have other ways." Liu Xianyun slowly shook her head, allowing herself to be dragged along by that terrifying force. Yang Kai became anxious, understanding that Liu Xianyun was determined not to drag him down. Just as he was about to throw her into the sealed world bead regardless of the cost, Liu Xianyun's expression suddenly changed, becoming extremely strange. In the next moment, she cried out, "Brother, don't resist, there won't be any danger if you don't." Hearing what she said, Yang Kai's expression brightened. Looking carefully, he found that Liu Xianyun really wasn't injured in the slightest. Knowing that she wasn't lying, he quickly dispersed his own strength and allowed the terrifying suction force to linger around him. The force that was originally suppressing him and causing great damage to his body disappeared at this moment. Indeed, as Liu Xianyun said, it was fine not to resist this force, but the more one resisted, the more uncomfortable it would be. But who wouldn't resist when faced with such a situation? Of course, they would try their best to escape, and once they did, they wouldn't be far from death. After giving up resistance, the powerful suction force came and Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun were quickly pulled towards the center of the solitary void mountain range. The surging force made Yang Kai feel like a lonely boat in the middle of a stormy sea, in danger of capsizing at any moment. "Brother, look." Liu Xianyun hugged Yang Kai's arm tightly, not minding that her breasts were being squeezed out of shape by Yang Kai's arm as she suddenly cried out in alarm. Yang Kai turned his head to look and his face sank. He found that in the direction of the suction force, a huge black funnel had appeared in front of him. Near this funnel, the earth was churning and squirming, and countless birds and beasts were being sucked in, their fates unknown. He wanted to release his divine sense to investigate the situation inside, but as soon as his divine sense left his body, it was torn apart, causing a sharp pain in his head, and he didn't dare to act rashly. Liu Xianyun also became more and more nervous, her tender body trembling like a quail without a nest in winter. She didn't know whether she would live or die after being sucked into this vortex. She had only been in the star boundary for a few years, so she was naturally unwilling to die like this. Looking up at Yang Kai, she found that although his face was dignified, there wasn't the slightest trace of panic. Her heart calmed down a lot. She felt that even if she had to die, if she could die together with Kai Yang, it would still be a good thing. Thinking of this, her body relaxed a lot for no reason. "Protect yourself." Yang Kai gently patted Liu Xianyun's back. As soon as he finished speaking, both he and Liu Xianyun were sucked into the vortex. In an instant, a feeling of dizziness spread throughout his body, making him unable to distinguish between north, south, east, and west. The whole world suddenly darkened, and there was no longer any light. Their bodies continued to spin and fall, as if the bottom of the vortex was a bottomless pit, causing them to panic and wonder when they would reach the end. However, what made Yang Kai feel a little relieved was that this kind of fall was not very dangerous. Liu Xianyun hugged him even tighter, her whole body stiff like a block of wood. After an unknown amount of time, Yang Kai suddenly felt a glimmer of light, but under the force of the vortex, he was unable to return to his senses and could not see his surroundings. Peng. With a loud bang, Yang Kai felt intense pain all over his body, as if his whole body was about to shatter, but he was not surprised. Instead, he was overjoyed because at this moment, he felt that he had landed on solid ground. The force of the vortex that had been wrapping around him also disappeared at the same time, leaving only a harsh whistling in his ears. Peng. Something constantly smashed around him, some even covering his body. Smelling it, Yang Kai could tell that it was a mixture of mud and flesh, an extremely unpleasant smell. Yang Kai did not dare to move, lest something unexpected happen, carefully urging his source qi to protect himself and Liu Xianyun, only to find that his source qi was circulating freely and would not cause any backlash from the inexplicable force, causing him to relax a little. Liu Xianyun seemed to have fainted and did not move at all, but from her breathing, it was obvious that she had not suffered any serious injuries. After a full half an hour, the commotion around them gradually subsided. Yang Kai waited for a while, and after confirming that there was no more danger, he pushed his source qi and blasted away the mud and debris that covered him, shooting up into the sky from under a mound. He landed lightly and first checked Liu Xianyun's situation, confirming that she had indeed fainted, then began to take a good look at his surroundings. Yang Kai was dumbfounded by what he saw. He found that he was actually on an island. This island did not occupy a large area, only a few kilometers in radius, and from the color of the soil and some debris on it, it was clear that this island had just been formed. Because the soil here was exactly the same as the soil in the depths of the solitary void mountain range, there were also many pieces of flesh and blood of birds and beasts on the island, giving the whole island a strange dark red color. This island must have been formed because of the changes in the solitary void mountain range. When the vortex-like force rotated, it brought the soil of the solitary void mountain range here and filled up this island. Around the island, there was an endless sea with fierce waves. What shocked Yang Kai even more was that on the surface of the sea, there was a strange scene of waterspouts sucking in water. These waterspouts rose from the surface of the sea and rushed into the sky, connecting the heavens and the earth in an imposing manner. There were countless waterspouts like this on the surface of the sea, some big and some small, but each one exuded an extremely strong suction force, giving off a very dangerous feeling. They were not stationary, but constantly moving. Some were fast, some were slow, and some were fast. The fast waterspouts were as fast as lightning, flashing past Yang Kai's field of vision, bringing with them monstrous waves with astonishing destructive power. Sensing the world energy around him, it was extremely rich. However, Kai Yang felt that the world energy here was different from the world energy of other places. As for what was different, he couldn't tell. What the hell is this place? How did he end up here after coming in from the big vortex in the depths of the solitary void mountain range? It was impossible to say that this was the depths of the solitary void mountain range. After all, this place looked extremely vast, and there was even a vast sea. How could this be the underground of the solitary void mountain range? Could this be a sealed world? Yang Kai was shocked. But the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. When he was swallowed by the vortex, Yang Kai clearly felt traces of space transmission. That huge vortex was most likely the entrance to this sealed world. If this place was a sealed world, then things were troublesome. Where should he go to find the exit in this vast sea? Chapter 2361. Just as Yang Kai was at a loss, a sound suddenly came from not far away and a figure soared into the sky and landed not far from him. Seeing this person, Yang Kai's expression changed greatly and he hurriedly pulled Liu Xianyun back, putting some distance between them. This person was actually Yarrow Chang-jun. When he was swallowed by the vortex earlier, Yang Kai didn't find any trace of Yarrow Chang-jun, so he didn't know if he was swallowed first or later. In any case, from the looks of it, he definitely couldn't escape the catastrophe just now and fell into this place as well. Yarrow Chang-jun's current state was extremely miserable. His clothes were tattered, his white hair was disheveled, his body was covered in blood, and his aura was somewhat unstable. It was obvious that he had suffered a strong backlash from resisting the suction force earlier. Yang Kai had given up resisting because of Liu Xianyun's reminder. Even though he did not look too good at the moment, he was undoubtedly in a much better state than Yarrow Chang-jun. This guy is actually not dead. Yang Kai also admired his powerful cultivation. As expected of a third-order Emperor Realm Master. Even if his soul had suffered heavy damage, he would not die so easily. It's you evil beast. Yarrow Chang-jun soon discovered Yang Kai's figure and his face turned cold as murderous intent surged. If it were not for Yang Kai, how could he have taken the risk to chase him into the solitary void mountain range? If he had not chased him into the solitary void mountain range, How could he have encountered the solitary void great maelstrom? Now that he was in this predicament, the culprit behind everything was Yang Kai. Now that he had met his enemy, it was natural that his eyes would turn red. Just as he was about to attack Yang Kai in anger, another soft sound came from not far away and another figure rushed out from the ground. This change surprised both Yang Kai and Yarrow Changjun. They both looked over. But after seeing the appearance of this person, the two quickly relaxed. Because the third person to appear here was Marsh City's city lord, Pang Guang. Yarrow Changjun knew that Pang Guang was tailing them, but he was focused on finding Yang Kai, so he did not pay much attention to Pang Guang. The catastrophe of the solitary void mountain range had begun. Naturally, Pang Guang had no power to resist and was also sucked into this place. However, what surprised him was that Pang Guang's condition was much better than his. His whole body was only slightly disheveled, and there was not the slightest injury on him. He was full of energy. "You're all fine?" Pang Guang came out and was surprised to see Yang Kai and Yarrow Changjun confronting each other. Yarrow Changjun coldly snorted, "What do you want to happen to this old master?" When he saw Pang Guang's expression, he knew that Pang Guang knew how to avoid the devouring power. That was why he was unscathed. On the contrary, it was he who had concealed his identity in Marsh City for 200 years and ended up in such a sorry state. For a moment, he felt a little embarrassed. Having suffered a great loss at Yarrow Changjun's hands, how could Pang Guang dare to be presumptuous in front of him? He said, "It's great that Senior is fine." This Pang was just asking casually. Yang Kai grinned and said, "City Lord Pang is not kind. You clearly know how to avoid danger, but you didn't tell Senior Yarrow. You clearly want Senior Yarrow to die early and reincarnate. Senior Yarrow, if I were you, I wouldn't be able to bear it and would beat him up to vent my anger." Pang Guang's face sank. Carefully sizing up Yarrow Changjun, he saw his indifferent expression, unable to show his emotions, so he immediately shouted, "Little brat, don't talk nonsense. I haven't settled accounts with you for killing this king's subordinates and robbing this king's belongings. Senior Yarrow is a reclusive master, his vision as clear as a torch. How could he allow you to sow discord?" While speaking, he turned to look at Yarrow Changjun and cupped his fists. "Senior, although I have a grudge with this little brat, it's just a small matter. You are the most important person here. If you want to kill him or cut him up, this junior will only watch the show and will not interfere." Yarrow Changjun glanced at him indifferently and said slowly, "You've been following this old master all this time. Are you also here to watch the show?" A layer of cold sweat suddenly appeared on Pang Guang's forehead as the corner of his mouth twitched. "Senior misunderstands. This Pang only entered the solitary void mountain range to do one thing. I had no intention of following Senior." Yarrow Changjun coldly snorted and declined to comment, his expression proud. Although he was also injured when he was swallowed by the Great Vortex, he didn't put either Pang Guang or Yang Kai in his eyes. Earlier, he was injured by Yang Kai in the tea house only because he wasn't on guard enough. However, in his current state, it would be best if he didn't fall out with Pang Guang. After all, he wasn't at his peak, and Pang Guang was a First-Order Emperor Realm Master. If they really fought, even if he could kill Pang Guang, he would have to pay a certain price. "Senior, is this the legendary solitary void-sealed world?" Pang Guang saw him not saying anything and felt a little apprehensive, so he quickly changed the subject. "Solitary void-sealed world?" When Yang Kai heard this, he couldn't help but raise his brow. Right now, he wanted to figure out what kind of damned place this was. Unlike Pang Guang and Yarrow Changjun, he was a newcomer. These two obviously knew some information, so he couldn't help but perk up his ears and listen with great interest. "Since you know, why ask this old master?" Yarrow Changjun coldly snorted, obviously not liking him. Pang Guang said embarrassedly, "I really didn't expect the solitary void-sealed world to really exist. This Pang has been city lord for hundreds of years, but today, I've finally learned something new. What kind of place is the solitary void-sealed world? How do we get out?" Yang Kai quickly asked. Pang Guang's face turned serious as he shouted, "Why are you asking so many questions? Just stay here and wait for death." Yang Kai's face turned black as he said, "City Lord Pang, No matter what kind of grudges we had before, we're all on the same boat now. If you have any information, please share it with me. It's not like I killed your father or stole your wife, so why be so stingy? Pang Guang sneered, people who walk different paths cannot work together. This king has nothing to say to you. Let's talk about it again after you've survived Senior Yarrow's attack. Yang Kai had offended Yarrow Chang-jun, so Pang Guang had long regarded Yang Kai as a dead man in his heart. How could he have the leisure to chat with him? After he finished speaking, he looked at Yarrow Chang-jun with a flattering smile. Senior, this solitary void-sealed world only exists in legends. It's easy to enter, but difficult to get out. Does Senior have any good ideas? The speed at which he changed his expression was faster than flipping a book. Yang Kai laughed, so you don't know how to get out either. Pang Guang snorted, what's so funny about that? Be careful not to laugh until your teeth fall out. As he spoke, Pang Guang suddenly frowned and gently sniffed the air, asking suspiciously, what's that smell? A strange fragrance suddenly wafted through the air, causing one's spirit to shake upon smelling it. Yang Kai and Yarrow Chang-jun obviously smelled it as well. The two of them felt that this fragrance was extremely familiar. After exchanging a glance, they both thought of something and exclaimed at the same time, Heavenly Restoration Lotus. As they spoke, the two of them had already rushed towards the source of the fragrance. Pang Guang was stunned for a moment, but after hearing the three words Heavenly Restoration Lotus, his expression changed and he also rushed over. Although Pang Guang and Yarrow Chang-jun were both masters from the Emperor realm, Yang Kai had the divine technique of space, so his explosive speed was naturally not something the two of them could compare to. In just a flash, Yang Kai had already arrived at the source of the fragrance. It was a pile of mud. This mud pile was clearly transported over from the solitary void mountain range as the soil was clear. Yang Kai directly reached into the mud pile and grabbed something. Feeling the size of this thing and the energy fluctuations it was emitting, he was overjoyed and was about to throw it into his space ring. Little brat, you caught death. Yarrow Chang-jun was furious and sent out a palm strike towards Yang Kai. Fortunately, he did not dare to use his full strength for fear of damaging the spirit herb, but this palm strike was still not something Yang Kai could resist. Yang Kai snorted and forcefully urged his strength to teleport again, dodging the attack. Hong. The mud pile was directly smashed into dust, leaving behind a huge crater. The entire newly formed island also shook a few times, looking like it would collapse at any moment. Yarrow Chang-jun stood in place with an ashen face and looked coldly in a certain direction. Pang Guang also paused, a look of disbelief appearing on his face. Yang Kai was actually able to dodge Yarrow Chang-jun's attack. This scene completely exceeded his expectations. Even he himself might not have been able to dodge that attack. Senior, why are you so angry? You really scared me to death. As Kai Yang spoke, he shook off the dirt in his hand. The spirit medicine that he had caught in his palm immediately revealed its true appearance. This spirit herb was the Heavenly Restoration Lotus. Its shape and size were exactly the same as the one Liu Xianyun had obtained before, but that one was as white as snow, without the slightest speck of dust, while this one was as black as ink. It was extremely strange. The Heavenly Restoration Lotus had always been two stalks. Liu Xianyun had obtained one of them by chance, but for some reason, she had not been able to find the second one. Now that the solitary void great vortex had appeared, a large number of spirit herbs and soil had been swallowed and transported to this island, so the second Heavenly Restoration Lotus had also appeared. Looking at the Heavenly Restoration Lotus in Yang Kai's hand, Yarrow Chang-jun's breathing suddenly became rapid. He had wasted 200 years in Marsh City. What was it for? Wasn't it for the Heavenly Restoration Lotus? As long as he could obtain the Heavenly Restoration Lotus and get someone to refine the twin Heavenly Restoration Pill, his injuries would be healed. At that time, he would be able to regain his peak strength and seek revenge on his enemies. However, after waiting for 200 years, although the Heavenly Restoration Lotus had appeared, his good fortune had been ruined by Yang Kai one after another. The previous one had been snatched away by Yang Kai when he was not paying attention, and the one in front of him was still the same. Yarrow Chang-jun's lungs were about to explode. Ever since he had ascended to the Emperor realm, He had never suffered such a big loss before. Moreover, it was at the hands of a Dao Source Realm brat. Looking at the heavenly restoration lotus in Yang Kai's hand and watching him slowly stuff it into his space ring, Yarou Chang-jun resisted the urge to snatch it away and quickly said, "Boy, give the heavenly restoration lotus to this old master and I will let bygones be bygones. This old master can even take you away from here." Hearing this, Pang Guang's eyes lit up and he hurriedly said, "Senior Yarou, you must take me with you." Yarou Chang-jun was so angry that he glared at him and roared, "If you dare to say another word, this old master will kill you right now." Pang Guang was shocked and did not dare to make a sound. Chapter 2362. Take me out first and we can talk about anything else. Yang Kai smiled at Yarou Chang-jun, or, you can tell me how to get out. Brat, you dare to bargain with this old master? Yarou Chang-jun was furious. Yang Kai said, "I'm just afraid that Senior will cheat me. With this old master's status, how could I do such a shameless thing?" Yarou Chang-jun coldly snorted. Yang Kai shook his head, "That's hard to say. If Senior doesn't know how to get out, wouldn't I be a fool to hand over the spirit herbs for nothing?" Pang Guang immediately shouted, "Little bastard, Senior Yarou is giving you face by asking you to hand over the spirit herbs, yet you dare not cooperate. You're courting death." Yang Kai and Yarou Chang-jun both turned their heads and snorted, "It's none of your business." Pang Guang's face was burning hot. His attempt at flattery had backfired, causing him to look embarrassed. Yang Kai stared at Yarou Chang-jun for a while before sneering, "It seems that Senior is a clay bodhisattva crossing a river. You can't even protect yourself, yet you still shamelessly boast about taking me out. Ridiculous, ridiculous." When he saw Yarou Chang-jun's current expression, he knew that he also didn't know how to get out of this damned place. If Yarou Chang-jun really had a way to leave, it was not impossible to use the twin heavenly restoration lotus to exchange for it, but the problem was that this old man couldn't even get out himself, so how could he take him with him? Being exposed by Yang Kai, Yarou Chang-jun was not angry at all and only said lightly, "With this old master's cultivation, how can a mere sealed world trap me? This old master will eventually find a way out. Then we'll talk about it when you find a way out. Are you going to hand it over or not?" Yarou Chang-jun had obviously lost his patience. When he asked this question, his old face was so gloomy that it was almost dripping water. "What do you think?" Yang Kai had an indifferent expression. "Very good." Yarou Chang-jun took a deep breath. His killing intent had been activated. However, he did not immediately make a move on Yang Kai and instead turned his gaze to Pang Guang. Pang Guang, who was watching a good show, suddenly noticed Yarou Chang-jun's cold gaze and couldn't help trembling as he said, "Senior, scram." Yarou Chang-jun roared, "Otherwise, this old master will kill you too." Their voices converged into a wave that rushed towards Pang Guang like a spear. Pang Guang's entire body shook, and he stumbled back a few steps, his face pale. "Senior, I can lend you a hand and help you capture this brat." Pang Guang hurriedly expressed his sincerity. Suddenly falling into this solitary void-sealed world, he really couldn't find any sense of security with his first-order Emperor realm cultivation. He only wanted to hug Yarou Chang-jun's thigh, but he didn't expect that the other party wouldn't give him any face or opportunity, telling him to scram. Yarou Chang-jun coldly snorted, "This old man needs your help. If you don't leave now, then don't ever leave." Pang Guang was shocked. Gritting his teeth, he looked at Yang Kai and then at Yarou Chang-jun. Only then did he stomp his foot and leap up, heading towards the depths of the sea. He didn't know why Yarou Chang-jun was in such a hurry to drive him away. However, he knew that the other party was really impatient. If she continued to pester him, she would definitely arouse his killing intent. With his cultivation, he had no chance of winning against Yarou Chang-jun. He could only escape first. Although the sea didn't look peaceful and was instead full of dangers, and he didn't even know which direction to run in, it was still better than staying here and waiting for death, right? In just 10 breaths of time, Pang Guang disappeared. "You're in such a hurry to drive Pang Guang away. Are you afraid that he will see that your soul is damaged?" Yang Kai looked at Yarou Chang-jun with a smile and asked lightly. Yarou Chang-jun's expression changed drastically, and a dangerous light flashed in his narrowed eyes. You really weren't lucky when you sneak attacked this old man. Yang Kai laughed. The effect of the twin heavenly restoration lotus is nothing more than to repair the broken meridians of the Dantian and knowledge sea. Senior seems to be full of qi and emperor qi, so it's obviously not a problem with your meridians or Dantian. Since you're in such a hurry to use the twin heavenly restoration lotus, it's obvious that you want to repair your knowledge sea. You're so proficient in the Tao of alchemy. Yarou Chang Jun was a little surprised. To be able to deduce that his soul had been damaged from such a small clue, this little brat was obviously not simple. I'm just an emperor-grade alchemist. Yang Kai smiled slightly. Yarou Chang Jun's expression changed slightly, but he soon snorted coldly. Look at this old man. Do I look like someone with a problem with my IQ? He obviously thought that Yang Kai was talking nonsense. Yang Kai was not very old, and being able to reach the third-order Tao source realm was already shocking enough. If he were to say that he was an emperor-grade alchemist, Yarou Chang Jun would be the first to not believe it. Yang Kai might be an alchemist, otherwise, it would be impossible for him to be proficient in alchemy, but he was definitely not an emperor-grade alchemist. He felt that Yang Kai was saying this because he wanted him to let him live. After all, even if he obtained the twin heavenly restoration lotus, he still needed an alchemist to refine a spirit pill, and an emperor-grade alchemist was the best choice. This brat had a belly full of guts and was hiding a lot of evil trick. Yarou Chang Jun was on high alert. Yang Kai was stunned, but he soon smiled bitterly and shook his head. Senior, your soul has been damaged, and your IQ has indeed been affected. This is an illness, and if it's an illness, it needs to be treated. He was telling the truth, but the other party was not willing to believe him. This made him not know whether to laugh or cry. No matter how eloquent you are today, you still have to hand over the twin heavenly restoration lotus. Yarou Chang Jun coldly snorted. Yang Kai's face turned cold. I said, first tell me how to get out of here. If you can't even do this, then don't even think about it. I'd rather feed it to a dog than give it to you. Little brat, you're courting death. This old man's patience is limited. Yarou Chang Jun was furious when he heard Yang Kai comparing him to a dog. Yang Kai said slowly, I'm not afraid of a third-order Emperor Realm Master, but don't force me. If you push me too far, you won't have a good ending either. Yarou Chang Jun was stunned, and an absurd feeling welled up in the depths of his heart. A third-order Tao Source Realm cultivator daring to speak so confidently in front of him was already an extremely inconceivable thing, but now, this little brat was actually boasting so shamelessly, as if he had the strength to fight him. It was clear that the other party's expression was extremely sincere, without the slightest bit of guilt. What's going on? This little brat can't really fight me, right? What is he relying on? That elusive space divine technique? If that's the case, he can only run away. There's nothing to be afraid of. Yarou Chang Jun's mind was filled with distracting thoughts, but he couldn't think of a reason, so he became angry out of shame. Since you don't know how to appreciate kindness, this old man will fulfill your wish. With a tap of his foot, he closed in on Yang Kai like a ghost, forming a seal with one hand and leisurely pointing his finger at Yang Kai. This finger contained the grandeur of the heavens and earth, giving off an oppressive aura of the heavens and earth. After all, Yarou Chang Jun was a third-order master from the Emperor realm. Although his soul was injured, his martial Tao foundation was still extremely solid. Although there was nothing special about this finger, it was extremely ferocious, containing the other party's comprehension of the heavenly way and martial Tao. Before the finger even arrived, it already gave off an aura that could split the heavens and earth. The power of the world principles lingered on this finger, as if Yarou Chang Jun was the master of this world. Seeing that Liu Xianyun was really going to attack him, Yang Kai's face changed and he no longer cared about anything else. Pushing his source qi, he directly stuffed the unconscious Liu Xianyun into the sealed world bead. At the same time, he used his dragon transformation secret technique and space principles to escape. Kai, with a soft sound, when Yang Kai reappeared, he was already several dozen meters away. However, there was a bloody hole in his shoulder blade. Golden blood gushed out from the hole as a piercing pain spread through his body. Achem! Yarou Chang Jun's expression froze as he revealed a look of surprise. He was not only surprised that Yang Kai was able to avoid hitting his vitals under his attack, but also where Liu Xianyun had gone. He had been paying attention to Yang Kai's movements and didn't pay much attention to the unconscious woman in his hand, but even he didn't notice how she had disappeared. This was really strange. Although his soul was injured and he didn't dare to use his divine sense easily, his eyesight was still so poor that he couldn't even see a person disappear. Old dog, do you really want to fight with this young master? Yang Kai's aura was violent, and half of his body was soon soaked in blood, but that blow not only did not make him feel any fear, it instead seemed to have stimulated his ferocious nature, causing his aura to become as ferocious as a trapped beast. Yarrow Chang Jun's heart jumped for no reason as he faintly felt that if he continued to pressure him, he would be in big trouble. This feeling came out of nowhere, but it made his hair stand on end. However, there was no turning back. He had already injured Yang Kai, so it was useless to say anything now. If he suddenly stopped, wouldn't that be admitting that he was afraid of him? Not bad, little brat. To be able to avoid this old master's attack, you are indeed a dragon among men. The heavens are virtuous, and this old master also cherishes talents. I will give you one more chance. Obediently hand over the heavenly restoration lotus and I can spare your life. Scram. Good, good, good. Yarrow Chang Jun was furious. Since you are so stubborn, this old master will teach you how to behave. His hand posture changed as his emperor chi surged, restraining Yang Kai's movements while his palm surged with the power of wind and clouds, fiercely slamming towards Yang Kai. He didn't hold back in this attack, obviously intending to kill Yang Kai. Asterisk Hong, asterisk an explosive sound rang out. No matter how Kai Yang tried to defend himself, he was still sent flying by this palm strike. Countless bones in his body were broken and his face was pale. Opening his mouth, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Ha ha ha, little brat, you talk big, but that's all you have. You really disappoint this old master. Seeing him so miserable, Yarrow Chang Jun's heart calmed down. He felt that he had probably been overthinking things. This brat was just a third-order Dao Source Realm cultivator. Even if he had some trump cards and methods, he couldn't possibly be his opponent. He didn't know why he was hesitating just now. If he had acted earlier, he would have killed him long ago. How shameful. Yarrow Chang Jun thought to himself. His mind had actually been disturbed by a little brat's words. Sure enough, his soul had been seriously injured, leaving behind a residual effect. Fortunately, the other party was just a third-order Dao Source Realm cultivator. If their strength was on par, then he really wouldn't have a good ending. Chapter 2363. On the island, Yarrow Chang Jun's figure moved, disappearing in an instant. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the flying Yang Kai, unable to get rid of him. He coldly snorted, casually reaching out to grab Yang Kai. If you had cooperated earlier, this old man might not have taken your life. In other words, it was too late for Yang Kai to beg for mercy. He had been ambushed by Yang Kai once, and had long harbored a grudge in his heart. He viewed this as a great humiliation, so how could he let it go so easily? Bullying others too far is destined to not end well. You forced me to do this. Yang Kai roared through gritted teeth. He did not dodge Yarrow Chang Jun's grab, but instead formed a strange seal with his hands. As soon as the seal was formed, the feeling that made Yarrow Chang Jun tremble in fear appeared again. He was so shocked that his expression changed. He did not dare to hesitate in the slightest as his hands suddenly moved faster, grabbing Yang Kai's shoulder blade. At this moment, Yang Kai's expression suddenly calmed down. His eyes were cold as he said, word by word, Tsungshuan seal, release. Tsungshuan seal? What the hell is that? Yarrow Chang Jun's face was blank. He did not understand what Yang Kai was saying, but in the next moment, his expression changed drastically. It was as if he had been struck by lightning. His eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. At the same time, he let out a strange cry and hurriedly retreated. Boom, with a loud explosion, an indescribable aura suddenly erupted from Yang Kai's dantian. The aura was filled with an extremely dark and evil feeling, as if the world's most brutal and vicious negative emotions had gathered together. Even someone as strong as Yarou Chang-jun could not help but become dazed. His whole body trembled. The pitch-black aura spread out like a substance. In an instant, it wrapped around Yang Kai. The aura seemed to have a life of its own, constantly flowing around Yang Kai's body, gathering mysterious and profound runes on his skin one after another. Yang Kai's aura rose steadily. The world trembled, the universe collapsed, and the universe was turned upside down. A might that seemed to be able to destroy the heavens and the earth sputtered in the void, bursting out in all directions. In a short period of time, Yang Kai had already disappeared without a trace. As far as the eye could see, there was only a pitch-black figure left. The pitch-black figure seemed to be able to swallow everything, and even light couldn't penetrate it in the slightest. Only a pair of scarlet-red eyes, filled with bloody killing intent. Demonic Qi. Yarou Chang-jun's teeth were chattering. He almost bit his tongue as he stared at the scene in front of him in disbelief. With his experience, he could naturally tell that the demonic Qi lingering around Yang Kai was demonic Qi, and it was not an ordinary demonic Qi, but the purest ancient demonic Qi. How is this possible? Yarou Chang-jun couldn't believe his eyes. In his lifetime, he had never seen such a thing. He actually saw the ancient demonic Qi. Moreover, it appeared in the body of a cultivator from the third-order Dao source realm. The ancient demonic Qi had extremely corrosive and assimilating properties. Even a third-order Emperor realm master like him would definitely lose his mind in the shortest amount of time and become a demonic creature if he was enveloped by the ancient demonic Qi. How was Yang Kai able to keep his mind clear? How was he able to store such a terrifying demonic Qi in his body? Thinking back to what Yang Kai had said before, Yarou Chang-jun suddenly came to a realization. This brat had used some unknown method to seal the demonic Qi in his body, and when he needed to fight an enemy, he could unlock the seal. However, if that was the case, it would be even more difficult to seal the demonic Qi again. He wasn't afraid that the demonic Qi would really devour his mind. Becoming a demonic creature. No wonder this brat had repeatedly told him not to force him. It turned out that he really did have the strength to fight him. Even if he was a bit opportunistic, he still had the capital to say such big words. Yarou Chang-jun was so annoyed that he wanted to die. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have forced Yang Kai so much. Now that the brat in front of him was enveloped by the demonic Qi, he didn't know if he still had any rationality left. That surging demonic Qi and terrifying pressure made Yarou Chang-jun have no intention of fighting him. Looking carefully at Yang Kai's eyes, he found that although they were red and bloodthirsty, there seemed to be a trace of rationality struggling in them. Yarou Chang-jun hurriedly said, "Little brother, please wait. This old master has something to say." Hearing this, Yang Kai glanced at him indifferently and said indifferently, "I'll treat whatever you say as fart." Yarou Chang-jun was furious. If Yang Kai dared to talk to him like this before, he would have definitely slapped him, but now, Yang Kai had the capital to say such things. He felt bitter in the depths of his heart as he realized the source of the uneasiness in his heart. His expression kept changing. "My strength seems to have increased." Yang Kai clenched his fists and felt his current state. He was not happy, but worried. Because this time, after unlocking the firmament tree's gold and silver seals and releasing the demonic Qi of the ancient great demon in his body, he felt that his strength was much stronger than the last time he demonized. This was not because his strength had increased, but because the demonic Qi was more compatible with his body. Last time, he was only in the first-order Dao source realm. After demonizing, he fought against the three great emperors and escaped safely. This time, the demonization was even stronger than before. This made Yang Kai a little worried, because the greater the increase in strength after demonization, the more difficult it would be to seal him. If he could not seal him completely, he would really become a demon, lose his mind, and be consigned to eternal damnation. Yarou Chang-jun did not know that Yang Kai was worried about this. When he heard him say that his strength had increased, he thought that this brat was showing off and immediately became angry. "Brat, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. You and I have fallen into such a predicament, so why fight and kill? Isn't it better to find a way out together? What's more, although you are strong now, you may not be able to kill this old master." This old master is not a pushover. Yang Kai looked at him coldly and snorted, if you were a real third-order Emperor Realm Master, this young master would not be able to kill you, but you are just a cripple with a damaged soul. How dare you talk nonsense in front of me? Cripple? Yarou Chang-jun's eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he flew into a rage out of humiliation. No one had ever dared to talk to him like this. Yang Kai said, this young master does not have much time. I will take your dog life in 3 moves. Arrogant. This old master wants to see how you can take my life in 3 moves. Yarou Chang-jun trembled with anger, feeling that he was being looked down upon. Pride welled up in his heart as he swore to himself that he would teach this brat a lesson and let him know that even an old dog had a few teeth. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, Yang Kai's expression suddenly froze as he muttered, black pupil purgatory, eternal darkness. As soon as he said this, the entire world suddenly turned pitch black, without the slightest trace of light. No matter how hard Yarou Chang-jun tried to use his eyesight, he could not see anything, as if he had suddenly gone blind. Not only was he blinded, even his keen perception as a third-order Emperor Realm Master was suppressed to the limit at this moment. It was impossible for him to go blind for no reason, and it was impossible for the world to turn dark without any warning. The only explanation was that Yang Kai had used some kind of heaven-defying method. Recalling the strange black light in Yang Kai's right eye, Yarou Chang-jun cried out in alarm, eye technique. As soon as the words left his mouth, he broke out in cold sweat because he found that his voice could not be heard. The world he was in seemed to have deprived him of all his senses, making him unable to speak or see. It made him feel as if he had fallen into an abyss of purgatory with no end in sight. There seemed to be something above his head, causing Yarou Chang-jun to look up in shock. When he saw what it was, his whole body suddenly stiffened. In the boundless dark sky, a huge eye stretched across the void, emotionless as it stared coldly at him. That eye seemed to be the eye of heaven, and that pupil seemed to be the eye of earth. Under that huge eye, Yarou Chang-jun suddenly felt a sense of inferiority and insignificance. In an instant, he was disheartened, feeling that his countless years of bitter cultivation were meaningless. In the end, he was still a pile of bones. As soon as this thought appeared, Yarou Chang-jun's entire aura withered as an indescribable death chi lingered around him. At that moment, a stream of light suddenly shot out from the huge eye. This stream of light was shaped like a long saber. Emperor artifact, soul-splitting saber. After being refined by Yang Kai, the soul-splitting saber could be used at will. Although Yang Kai could not display the full power of the soul-splitting saber with his usual cultivation, Yang Kai's current demon transformation was not inferior to a third-order Emperor Realm Master, so the power of the soul-splitting saber's attack was terrifying. What's more, in order to kill Yarou Chang-jun quickly, Yang Kai had even used the Heaven-Severing Slash. The Heaven-Severing Slash was a soul-secret technique that he had learned from Tian Yang in the Divine Ascension Mirror World. When he had nothing to do, he could use his soul to nourish and refine the soul-splitting saber. Once he faced an enemy, the soul-splitting saber's first strike would be extremely powerful. However, this was only limited to the first strike. With an Emperor artifact and a secret technique, even if Yarou Chang-jun was in perfect condition, he might not be able to withstand it, let alone when his soul was already damaged. This saber slashed fiercely into Yarou Chang-jun's knowledge sea, tearing a huge hole in it with unstoppable force. Yarou Chang-jun's knowledge sea was already severely damaged, and now that it was struck by Yang Kai, it was even worse. His third-order Emperor Realm knowledge sea showed faint signs of collapsing. Only then did Yarou Chang-jun recover from his despair. He let out a heart-wrenching cry as a 5-colored spear suddenly appeared in his hand. This spear shone brightly and exuded the energy fluctuations of an Emperor artifact. Its power was terrifying. Yarou Chang-jun was a third-order Emperor Realm Master, so it was not surprising that he had an Emperor artifact. It would be strange if he did not have one. As he cried out in pain, he frantically poured his Emperor Chi into the 5-colored spear. The spear buzzed incessantly before suddenly trembling slightly in his hand and disappearing. In the next moment, the giant eye that stretched between the heavens and the earth was pierced by the spear, and the darkness that sealed the world suddenly shattered. As Yarou Chang-jun fought like a cornered beast, he managed to erupt with terrifying power and break through the Eternal Darkness secret technique. This secret technique was a secret technique unique to the ancient giant demon clan. It was not something that young Kai had cultivated and could only be used when he was in his demon transformation state. A crack was torn in the sky by the five-colored spear, and it did not close for a long time. "Brat, you dare hurt me? This old master will kill you." Yarrow Chang Jun roared loudly, but his knowledge sea was about to collapse. His entire body trembled as his face twitched and his emperor chi became extremely unstable. Chapter 2364. Yang Kai's right eye was covered in blood, and everything he saw had turned into a golden hue. This was the injury caused by his eye technique being broken. He casually wiped it and coldly snorted, "I'll send you on your way." As his hands opened and closed, a gigantic moon blade took shape. With a slight tremble, it shot towards Yarrow Chang Jun. The moon blade was like the scythe of the god of death, destroying everything in its path. Yarrow Chang Jun, who was in a frenzy, instinctively sensed the approaching danger. Enduring the heart-wrenching pain, he waved his hand and the five-colored spear appeared in his hand again. He took a step forward and flicked it, sending out a five-colored profound light. Asterisk hong hong hong, asterisk the profound light and the moon blade collided, and the violent energy shock caused the world to change color. The newly formed island, which was a few kilometers in radius, suddenly crumbled and quickly disintegrated. The moon blade disappeared, and behind the five-colored profound light, Yarrow Chang Jun took advantage of the situation to attack, his face filled with unforgettable hatred and the resolve to fight to the death. Yang Kai raised his brow and shouted angrily, "Instead of stubbornly resisting, obediently accept your death." He did not expect Yarrow Chang Jun to be so tenacious even after his knowledge sea had collapsed. It seemed that he had underestimated the ability of a third-order Emperor Realm Master. If Yarrow Chang Jun was really unharmed, even if he released the seal on the demonic chi, he would not be his opponent. A master who had cultivated to this level was indeed not simple. "Hammer, come." Yang Kai reached out and grabbed at the void, and a pitch-black war hammer suddenly appeared in his hand. The demonic war hammer. This demonic war hammer was originally the weapon of the ancient great demon, and it had been sealed under the 18 springs outside Maplewood City. It was filled with extremely terrifying demonic chi. After Yang Kai collected it, he threw it into the sealed world bead for his embodiment to refine. Even someone as strong as Yang Kai did not dare to covet it, for fear that its demonic chi would trigger the seal in his body. But now was the perfect time to use it. With the warhammer in hand, Yang Kai had a strange feeling. This demonic war hammer seemed to have come alive. After he held it in his hand, it gave off clear fluctuations of excitement and joy, forming a perfect resonance with the demon chi in his body. Yang Kai didn't need to refine it to be able to wield it like an extension of his arm. The hammer was in his hand. Yang Kai seemed to be able to see the scene of the ancient giant devil fighting the ancient supreme experts all by himself. That scene of flesh and blood flying everywhere, the heavens and earth collapsing. One after another, the ancient supreme experts died under the hammer, their bodies and Tao vanishing. The ancient giant devil towered over the heavens, his killing intent surging as he looked down at the world. "I'm the only one." Yang Kai, who had been agitated by the influence of demonic chi, calmed down inexplicably. For a moment, he felt as if he was the only one in the world. On the other side, Yarrow Chang Jun, who was aggressively rushing over, was as laughable as an ant. He stared at his opponent with contempt and slowly raised the warhammer in his hand. An inexplicable trace of the laws of heaven and earth began to stir. Yarrow Chang Jun's expression suddenly changed. His face was bloodless. He had no idea what had happened to Yang Kai. He only saw him suddenly take out a warhammer-like artifact, and then his entire demeanor and temperament changed. He seemed to see an unattainable mountain in front of him. No matter how hard he tried, he could not see the scenery behind this mountain. He suddenly panicked. He wanted to retreat, but the arrow on the bowstring had to be released. The chi in his body was already rioting. If he retreated now, there was no need for Yang Kai to act. His Tao heart would collapse in an instant. A faint murderous intent lingered on his body, and as he approached, the murderous intent became stronger and clearer. It was almost tangible, cutting his skin painfully. "I'll die. I'll definitely die." This thought inexplicably popped up in Yarrow Chang-jun's mind. His mind was in chaos, and his knowledge sea, which was already on the verge of collapse, could no longer be maintained. "Ah!" Yarrow Chang-jun roared madly, "Even if I die, this old master will drag you down with him." As soon as he finished speaking, he poured all his strength into the five-colored spear. His body was wrapped in a five-colored light, and his aura was like a rainbow. There was no longer any hesitation from before. Instead, he became resolute. This blow actually erupted with his peak strength. Yarrow Chang-jun's originally flustered and turbid eyes also bloomed with a dazzling light at this moment. Yang Kai's face was expressionless as he smashed down with his hammer. The crazy murderous intent condensed into a hammer intent that rushed towards Yarrow Chang-jun. A loud noise rang out, and above this nameless sea, a pitch-black light burst out, as if it was devouring the heaven-devouring great emperor. At the same time, another five-colored light bloomed at the same time, competing with the pitch-black light. The two different colored lights confronted each other and collided. For a moment, the sea surged and the already collapsed island was shaken into powder, dissipating without a trace. The nearby waterspouts were also hit by the huge aftermath and collapsed. Within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers, tsunamis surged, and countless fish and monster beasts living in the sea turned into white light and disappeared. At the center of the collision, a crater several hundred meters deep appeared on the sea surface. The water in the crater seemed to have evaporated in an instant. The stalemate lasted for less than 10 breaths of time before the pitch-black light suddenly burst out and swallowed up the five-colored light. "Why, damn heavens, this old master refuses to accept this." A roar resounded through the sky, and an unwilling voice echoed. The pitch-black and five-colored light that filled the world disappeared, and the huge crater on the sea surface was gradually filled with seawater. Heavy rain poured down, and only the remaining energy fluctuations between the heavens and earth showed that a great battle had just taken place here. Yarrow Chang-jun was nowhere to be seen, and so was Yang Kai. Only a long-incised bead was left, slowly sinking into the depths of the sea. Inside the small sealed world, Yang Kai rushed to the medicine garden at the first moment. His whole body was as black as ink, with indescribable demon crests crawling all over his body. Liu Yang rushed over at the same time, but after seeing Yang Kai's situation, she was so scared that she immediately fled. It wasn't that she didn't dare to stay here, but that she couldn't. Although Yang Kai was barely able to preserve a trace of his consciousness, who knew how long this consciousness would last? She would only cause trouble for Yang Kai if she stayed here. Next to the medicine garden, Yang Kai sat cross-legged with difficulty. With a slight thought, he began to strip the golden and silver sealing power from the firmament tree. The last time he was demonized, he used the sealing power of the firmament tree to seal the demonic chi. It had been more than 2 years since then, and logically speaking, it was impossible for the firmament tree's sealing power to grow so quickly. However, there was a large amount of heavy earth below the medicine garden, and there were also 5 earth vein pearls. 1 year of growth here was equivalent to 100 years of growth outside. In other words, the firmament tree now had 200 years of sealing power, which should be enough to seal the demonic chi. Under Yang Kai's control, the golden and silver powers were slowly stripped from the firmament tree, and then flowed to Yang Kai's body, immersing into the dantian, suppressing and sealing the violent demonic chi. In any case, Kai Yang had experienced this once before, so this time, he was quite familiar with it. As time passed, more and more of the demonic chi was sealed, and Yang Kai slowly got rid of the effects of demonization and gradually recovered his consciousness. 3 days later, as the last trace of the sealing power was drawn into his body, the demonic chi was finally sealed without a trace left. Yang Kai let out a long sigh of relief. He was really afraid that something would go wrong during the sealing stage. The power obtained from unsealing the demonic chi this time was undoubtedly much stronger than before. Fortunately, the sealing power of the firmament tree had also become stronger, otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. After solving the hidden danger of the demonic chi, Yang Kai began to check his injuries. In the battle with Yarou Chang-jun, it seemed that he had the absolute advantage, and even finished him off in a few moves after demonization, but Yarou Chang-jun's final counterattack still caused him a lot of damage. The other party was a third-order Emperor Realm Master, and if his knowledge C had not been broken, how could he have killed him so easily? Who knew how many bones in his body were broken, and the blood on the surface of his body had dried up at this moment, as if he was wearing a layer of blood. What made Yang Kai sad the most was that his meridians were somewhat damaged. Fortunately, there was the immortal tree in the medicine garden. In terms of healing power, even the twin lotuses were not as effective as the immortal tree. Not to mention, his own recovery ability was extremely strong, so he did not need other medicines. Half a day later, Yang Kai was full of energy again. He shook off the blood on his body and changed into a new set of clothes. Recalling the battle with Yarou Chang-jun, Yang Kai could not help but feel a little anxious. This time, he was able to use the demonic chi to kill Yarou Chang-jun, but what about the next time? The next time he unsealed the demonic chi, it would not be something that could be sealed with just 200 years of sealing power. It might take 300 years, 400 years, or even more. In other words, the demonic chi would have to grow in the medicine garden for 3 or 4 years before it would have enough sealing power for Yang Kai to undo the seal. After such a long time, who knew if he would encounter a powerful enemy? It would be great if he could get his hands on Supreme Divine Water. Supreme Divine Water was a creation of heaven and earth. It could quickly ripen all kinds of spirit plants without any side effects. A drop of Supreme Divine Water could definitely allow the demonic chi to obtain hundreds or thousands of years of sealing power. Unfortunately, Supreme Divine Water was too precious. Yang Kai had only seen it once, in the Flowing Time Temple, and it was obtained by Murong Xiao Xiao in the end. That was something left behind by the great emperors of the Flowing Time Great Emperor. He did not know if there was still any Supreme Divine Water in the star boundary. Yang Kai secretly made up his mind that in the next 34 years, he would never be able to undo the demonic chi seal again, unless he could find Supreme Divine Water to ripen the demonic chi in advance. Thinking of this, his thoughts suddenly became clear, and he felt refreshed. He transplanted the 2 heavenly restoration lotuses he had obtained one after the other into the medicine garden, then clapped his hands and stood up. Although the pure white heavenly restoration lotus had been plucked by Liu Xianyun for a long time, because it was well preserved, its medicinal efficacy had not faded, and its foundation had not been damaged. Planted in the medicine garden and covered by the vitality of the immortal tree, it would definitely come back to life. The value of the twin lotus flower was extremely high. Yang Kai had no use for it now, so he naturally did not bother to refine the twin heavenly restoration pill. Chapter 2365. After dealing with this, Yang Kai released his divine sense. In the next moment, his figure flickered and appeared in front of the embodiment, Liu Yang, and the others. "Master, are you okay?" As soon as Liu Yang saw Yang Kai appear, she asked with joy. A few days ago, when she noticed that Yang Kai had entered the small sealed world, she went to check on Yang Kai's situation, but she didn't want to see the scene of Yang Kai being affected by the demonic chi, so she had been worried for the past few days. Even the embodiment and Hua Qing Sai were worried. At this moment, seeing how lively Yang Kai was, how could they not know that he had solved the problem of the demonic chi? "Ian, I've been resurrected." Yang Kai grinned. Hua Qing Sai said seriously, "Are you sure there are no sequelae? You can't be careless." "Don't worry, Sister Hua." As Yang Kai spoke, he suddenly took out something from his space ring and handed it to Hua Qing Sai. "This is for you." Hua Qing Sai took it suspiciously, but then her pretty face changed as she cried out involuntarily, "An emperor artifact?" What Yang Kai gave her was the 5-colored spear that Yarou Chang-jun used before. After the decisive battle, Yang Kai snatched this emperor artifact and Yarou Chang-jun's space ring before entering the small sealed world. Liu Yang already had the Annihilation Thunder Bead, and Hua Qing Sai had always been loyal to Yang Kai, so this 5-colored spear could naturally be given to her to use. Although an emperor artifact is powerful, the most important thing for a cultivator is their own foundation. "Sister Hua, you shouldn't neglect the essentials," Yang Kai said faintly. Hua Qing Sai played with the 5-colored spear. With an expression of fondness, she nodded and said, I know, do I need you to teach me? Smiling mischievously, Kai Yang rubbed his nose. Yang Kai hadn't had time to check Yarou Chang Jun's space ring yet, so when he took it out, he found that there were quite a few good things inside. There were hundreds of millions of source crystals, and more than half of them were mid-grade and high-grade. Yarou Chang Jun was a third-order Emperor Realm Master. To have so much wealth was within Kai Yang's expectations. With his cultivation, how could he be a pauper? In addition to source crystals, there were also a large number of spirit pills, herbs, and artifacts, but none of them were Emperor artifacts. After checking a little, Yang Kai suddenly remembered something and asked in surprise, where is Liu Xianyun? Previously, when Liu Xianyun was unconscious, Yang Kai threw her into the sealed world bead to avoid accidentally injuring her during his fight with Yarou Chang Jun. At this moment, he was nowhere to be seen. Liu Yang said, I put her in the attic. She has already woken up, but she seems to be confused about her situation. You didn't explain anything to her? No. Liu Yang shook his head. Forget explaining, he didn't even let Liu Xianyun see her face. I'll go take a look. As Yang Kai spoke, he disappeared from where he stood. In the attic. Liu Xianyun's expression was dignified. Her beautiful eyes were full of confusion. When she woke up earlier, she found herself in this loft. She didn't know where this place was. She looked around and found that there was no danger nearby. There was also no trace of anyone. However, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth here was a bit too rich. Liu Xianyun had never seen a place with world energy density comparable to this place. With such rich world energy, it was definitely a holy land for cultivation. She didn't even need to circulate her secret art. The surrounding world energy was constantly flowing into her body. If she could cultivate here for a long time, it wouldn't take long for her to break through her shackles and advance to the second-order Dao Source realm. However, she wanted to figure out where she was, so she wasn't in the mood to cultivate. What made her feel most uneasy was that Yang Kai was nowhere to be found. After a few days of searching, she even suspected that she had been abandoned. At this time, she was sadly staying in the attic, thinking about what she should do in the future. Suddenly, a figure flashed in front of her and Yang Kai strangely appeared. Brother. When Liu Xianyun saw Yang Kai, it was as if she had found her backbone and rushed to him, the anxious expression on her face relaxing a lot. Yang Kai smiled and said, something happened, so I was delayed for a few days. Brother, it's good that you're fine. Liu Xianyun looked Yang Kai up and down for a while and found that he was full of energy. Only then did she relax and ask, Brother, do you know where this is? Weren't we swallowed by that huge vortex before? Her memory was still stuck on the changes in the solitary void mountain range, and when she recalled the irresistible power of the vortex, her pretty face couldn't help but turn pale. We were swallowed, and then we fell into a sea. A sea. Liu Xianyun was even more confused. She had also explored the surrounding area for the past few days, but she didn't find any sea at all. On the contrary, the environment here was very pleasant, and there were many buildings. Clearly, many people had lived here before. If she could live here with her brother, it would be a good place to go. Yang Kai scratched his head, not knowing how to explain the current situation to Liu Xianyun, so he could only say, I'll take you there and you'll know. Saying so, Yang Kai brought Liu Xianyun out of the sealed world bead. As soon as the two appeared, they felt a fishy smell coming from all directions. Then, a strange sound came from all directions, and there was even the sound of a heart beating. With a sweep of his divine sense, Yang Kai understood his current situation. Previously, in order to enter the sealed world bead to seal the demonic qi, he didn't pay attention to where the sealed world bead fell, letting it fall into the depths of the sea. But after a few days, he didn't know how, but he ended up in the belly of a big fish. It seemed that this big fish had swallowed the sealed world bead and then carried them all the way to who knows where. After knowing this, Yang Kai circulated his strength and shot out his golden blood threads. After a flurry, they directly opened a hole in the back of the big fish and jumped up with Liu Xianyun. Although this big fish was quite large, it wasn't a powerful monster beast. After being tossed around by Yang Kai, it couldn't bear the pain. It kept rolling around in the sea, blood spreading everywhere. From the looks of it, it probably wouldn't survive. In the next moment, Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun rushed out of the sea. Yang Kai immediately summoned the wooden boat. He pulled Liu Xianyun up and stood on it. A faint fishy wind blew from the sea. The surrounding scenery was blue and blue, endless as far as the eye could see. Countless waterspouts covered the surroundings, and there was a suction force everywhere. It looked very dangerous. Liu Xianyun was stunned. She hadn't figured out where they were before, and now that they were suddenly on the sea, she was really at a loss. After we were swallowed by the vortex, we came here. Yang Kai raised his eyes and looked around. There was no trace of land, so he couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Where are we? Liu Xianyun asked in surprise. From what Yarrow Changjun and Pang Guang said, this seems to be some solitary void-sealed world. Yang Kai frowned. Solitary void-sealed world? Liu Xianyun looked confused. It seemed that she had never heard of it. She had only been in Marsh City for a few years, so she didn't know much about the secrets of this place. Naturally, she had never heard of the solitary void-sealed world. Yarrow Changjun and Pang Guang are also here? Liu Xianyun was startled again. She said in hindsight, "Don't worry. I don't know where they went." Yang Kai said casually. He didn't tell Liu Xianyun that Yarrow Changjun was dead. After all, it was too bizarre. However, Pang Guang had indeed left. Then what do we do now? Since we're here, let's just take things as they come. Yang Kai sighed. Let's first see if there are others living here. We'll gather some information about this place, then we'll find a way out. Ian, I'll leave it to Big Brother. Liu Xianyun had no idea at all, so she could only pin her hopes on Yang Kai. Immediately, Yang Kai steered the wooden boat and flew in a certain direction. Above the sea, there was no end in sight. Yang Kai couldn't tell north from south, east from west, and could only fly in one direction, hoping to find something. However, the omnipresent waterspouts on the surface of the sea were a great hindrance to him. The waterspouts were filled with extremely strong strangulation and devouring power. If one really fell into them, even a Dao Source Realm Master might not be able to escape safely. In order to get rid of the devouring power of these waterspouts, Yang Kai consumed a lot of his strength. After 3 full days, the two still hadn't found anything, as if this sea had no end at all. Even someone as calm as Yang Kai was slightly uneasy. If they couldn't find a place to land, would the two of them have to fly forever? If they continued like this, they would die sooner or later. Although he had the sealed world bead to avoid danger and recuperate, if they couldn't find a way out, it was equivalent to being trapped here for a lifetime. "Junior sister, you control the direction, I'll recover for a while," Yang Kai called out to Liu Xianyun and handed over the control of the wooden boat to her. Okay. Liu Xianyun had long wanted to share Yang Kai's worries and difficulties, so when she heard him say this, she was naturally duty-bound. Be careful of those waterspouts. If you encounter one that's too big, it's better to take a detour than force your way through. They're very dangerous, Yang Kai exhorted before sitting down cross-legged and throwing a few recovery spirit pills into his mouth while silently circulating his secret art. The world energy in this solitary void-sealed world was extremely rich. Although it couldn't compare to his sealed world bead, it wasn't any worse than the cultivation holy land of an ordinary sect. Yang Kai thought that with the help of spirit pills, he would quickly recover. But as time passed, he felt that something was wrong. The world energy he absorbed from this world seemed to be mixed with something else. When this thing entered his body, it was like sharp needles that constantly stimulated his meridians and flesh, causing unbearable pain. The more he cultivated, the more this thing would be absorbed. After half an hour, Yang Kai spat out a mouthful of blood, his face extremely ugly. "Brother, what's wrong?" Liu Xianyun's face changed drastically. Yang Kai was clearly recovering his source qi, so why did he suddenly spit out blood, as if he had suffered a serious injury? There weren't any enemies nearby. The world energy here is strange, we can't absorb it. The more we absorb, the easier it is for something to happen. Yang Kai gritted his teeth and stretched out his hand to wipe the blood from his mouth. Chapter 2366. How can this be? Liu Xianyun asked in shock. I don't know. Yang Kai was also confused and shook his head. There's something wrong with this sealed world. Ever since he started cultivating, he had never encountered world energy that he couldn't absorb. The world energy in this solitary void-sealed world was mixed with some unknown substance. The more he absorbed, the more damage it would cause to his foundation. In the long run, his meridians would definitely shatter and he would lose his cultivation. Fortunately, Yang Kai only cultivated for half an hour before stopping. Then what should we do? Liu Xianyun was completely flustered. If they couldn't absorb the world energy here, then she and Yang Kai would be exhausted sooner or later. Forget about finding a way out, it was very likely that they wouldn't even be able to leave this sea. In the end, they would only die from exhaustion. This situation was like a table full of delicacies in front of a starving person. Although they looked beautiful, they were highly toxic. If they ate, they would be poisoned to death, but if they didn't, they would starve to death. It's okay, I have a way. Yang Kai didn't panic and directly took out the sealed world bead and handed it to Liu Xianyun. Take this, I'll go in and recover. As he spoke, he had already entered the sealed world bead. Before Liu Xianyun had time to say anything, Yang Kai disappeared. She stared at the sealed world bead in her hand in a daze, then thought of the loft she had lived in before and the tranquil world around her. Liu Xianyun vaguely realized something and her pretty face couldn't help changing in shock. A moment later, she hurriedly put away the sealed world bead and carefully hid it. Only then did she concentrate on controlling the wooden boat to avoid the waterspouts and move forward. An hour later, Yang Kai reappeared. He wasn't as weak as before. At this moment, his complexion was rosy and he had obviously recovered. Liu Xianyun didn't say anything and just nodded lightly at him before returning the sealed world bead to him. She could cultivate to the third order origin king realm in the territory of the Great Desolate Star and become an overlord. Obviously, she was a smart person. Naturally, she knew what to ask and what not to ask. Yang Kai entrusted the sealed world bead to her for safekeeping. Undoubtedly, he trusted her very much. As for the mysteries of this sealed world bead, she was well aware of them. Days passed by. Every 2 or 3 days, Yang Kai would enter the sealed world bead to recover. After he recovered, he would control of the wooden boat. During this period, Liu Xianyun had also entered the small sealed world twice due to Seng Yuan's lack of strength, but she was quite obedient. In and out, he never asked anything. A month passed in the blink of an eye, but Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun were still floating above the sea, with no trace of land in sight. This sea seemed to be truly boundless, with no end in sight. On this day, Yang Kai returned from the small sealed world. Liu Xianyun's surprised voice sounded, "Senior brother, we seem to have found something. What's wrong?" Yang Kai was overjoyed and hurriedly asked. Liu Xianyun pointed ahead and said, "Look, the density of the waterspouts has decreased a lot. The further we go, the fewer there are." Yang Kai took a closer look and found that it was indeed as she said. The waterspouts that filled the sea had decreased a lot. This discovery made Yang Kai's eyes light up. Although there was still no sign of land, at least the surrounding scenery had finally changed. Before, Kai Yang had been wondering if he had gotten lost, or if he had been walking in circles in a certain place. Now, it seemed that he was not lost, nor was he going in circles. The sea was really, really big. This discovery made Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun's eyes light up. They spared no effort in driving the wooden boat forward. With the passage of time, the waterspouts around him became fewer and fewer, until they finally disappeared completely. This made Yang Kai certain that he was flying in the right direction. If he continued to move forward, he might be able to obtain some unexpected gains. 3 days later, Yang Kai, who was steering the wooden boat, suddenly had a change in his expression. He focused his vision and looked in a certain direction. In the next moment, his face lit up and he patted Liu Xianyun's shoulder. "Junior sister, there's a boat." Liu Xianyun was resting with her eyes closed. She did not dare to meditate casually in this damned place, so when Yang Kai spoke, she woke up. She stood up and looked in the direction Yang Kai pointed. Sure enough, she saw a small black dot in the distance. As for that little black dot, it was actually a large ship. Liu Xianyun could not help but get excited. She turned to look at Yang Kai and found that he was also beaming with joy. The two of them had been in this damned place for more than a month and had been wandering the sea. At this moment, they finally saw a boat. The joy they felt was indescribable. If there was a boat, it meant there were people, and if there were people, they could ask where this place was and where to go. Hastily, Kai Yang increased the speed of the wooden boat and went straight to meet the big ship. As the distance closed, the appearance of the big boat gradually became clear. This was a very large ship, and a high-grade artifact at that. This made young Kai extremely shocked because refining such an artifact would definitely take a lot of energy and financial resources. He did not know how the cultivator who lived in this damned place managed to do it. When the wooden boat flew over, the people on the boat who were responsible for keeping watch obviously noticed it. Before young Kai could approach, more than a dozen people appeared on the deck. These people stood there in a scattered manner, looking towards young Kai. They seemed to be extremely curious about his arrival, constantly pointing and whispering. Not long after, young Kai arrived not far in front of the boat. Looking around, he saw more than a dozen people, regardless of whether they were men or women. All of them had strong auras and were staring at him with vigilance. What surprised young Kai even more was that most of these people were actually Dao Source Realm cultivators. How did they maintain their cultivation in this damned place? After all, the world energy here could not be absorbed, and living here for a long time would definitely cause one's cultivation to regress. Although these dozen or so people seemed to be lacking in qi, which was obviously because they had not been cultivating properly, they had indeed maintained their cultivation. Among the dozen or so people, the leader was a woman. This woman had a fiery figure, and she was extremely well endowed. However, perhaps because she had been hanging around here for a long time, her skin was slightly dark. However, this did not affect her beauty. Instead, it added a kind of wildness to her. She stood there like a vigorous cheetah, her eyes extremely sharp. Yang Kai did not rush to board the boat, but instead cupped his fists to the people below and said, "Greetings, friends. May I ask where you are going? Can you give this one a ride?" The dozen people were indifferent, but the woman in the lead raised her head slightly and said lightly, "Where are you from?" Yang Kai pointed in a direction and said, "We came from that direction. Our boat was shipwrecked and only the two of us escaped." Of course, this was nonsense, but as a newcomer, Yang Kai did not want to expose his identity. "Shipwrecked?" The woman's expression changed slightly, but she didn't ask too much. She just sighed softly, as if it was a common thing to encounter mishaps on the sea. She nodded and said, "The two of you are lucky to have survived. I can let you board the ship, but you know the rules, right?" Rules? Yang Kai's heart jumped. He had been here for more than a month, and this was the first group of people he had met, so how could he know the rules? Just as he was about to ask, the woman frowned and said, 5,000 source crystals per person, so 2 people will be 10,000. Yes, yes. Yang Kai nodded quickly, thinking that the rules were to buy tickets. This rule was acceptable, but to Yang Kai's surprise, the price of the ticket was too cheap. It only cost 5,000 source crystals per person. Saying so, he reached out and wiped his space ring, wanting to take out the source crystals. The woman saw his action and could not help but frown. "You don't want to give me source crystals here, do you?" Yang Kai looked at her in amazement. "What's wrong?" The woman's expression immediately became strange when she heard this, staring at Yang Kai. Not only her, but the other cultivator standing on the deck also had a playful look on their faces. "What's going on?" Yang Kai frowned slightly, puzzled. Was it wrong to say that he wanted to give her source crystals here? What kind of flaw could that reveal? Just as Yang Kai was feeling suspicious, the woman took out a barrier token and waved it forward. The barrier covering the ship immediately cracked open and she said lightly, "Come in first." "Many thanks." Yang Kai suppressed the doubts in his heart and controlled the wooden boat to rush in. Stepping on the deck, Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun both couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. This feeling of being on solid ground was simply wonderful. "Come with me." The woman waved her hand and led the way. Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun looked at each other and hurriedly followed. The cultivator on the deck also automatically moved aside, allowing the two to pass through. After walking for a while, the woman suddenly asked, "How long have you been stranded in the solitary void sea?" So this was the solitary void sea, Yang Kai silently remembered. As for the other party's question, he didn't even think about it and answered, "It happened yesterday. Fortunately, we met you, otherwise the consequences would have been unimaginable. Many thanks to this young lady for taking us in." His aura was now stable, so he obviously hadn't consumed much source chi. Using the excuse of being stranded yesterday as an excuse was the best. "Is that so?" The corners of the woman's mouth rose slightly, revealing a thought-provoking smile. Kai Yang furrowed his brow, wondering if this woman had noticed something. However, he hadn't given himself away. He and Liu Xianyun looked at each other in confusion. While talking, the woman brought Yang Kai to a room, opened the door, and walked in. Yang Kai looked around and found that although this place wasn't big, the environment wasn't bad. It was quiet, and this room seemed to be supported by some kind of spirit array, but he didn't know what use it had. "Will we live here from now on?" Yang Kai asked. The woman glanced at him and said lightly, "You're thinking too much." Yang Kai's face turned black. He felt that this woman was really strange. If they didn't want to live here, why did she bring them here? Chapter 2367. If you want to stay here, it's 1,000 source crystals per day, the woman continued. Yang Kai's mouth twitched. Didn't we already pay for the ticket? Although he was not short of source crystals right now, he still couldn't agree with this woman's approach. Charging for a room was really too greedy. The ticket is the ticket, the room fee is the room fee. If there's a free room, why don't you stay? What's the difference? Yang Kai couldn't understand. Why were there fees and free rooms on this ship? The room in front of him didn't look very good, so why was there a fee? The woman explained, "There is a special spirit purifying array in this room that can purify the neutralizing force of the solitary void-sealed world. Although its grade is not very high, it can still be used for cultivation." It can be used for cultivation? Yang Kai's heart shook as he finally understood why the cultivator on this ship could maintain his cultivation. It turned out that it was because of this spirit purifying array. He had cultivated in this world once before, so he naturally knew what kind of damage the mysterious force that filled the world would cause to the cultivator when it entered his body. It turned out that this mysterious force was called neutralizing force. The woman's short sentence allowed Yang Kai to understand a lot of things. In that case, it was understandable that this room would charge a fee. The spirit purifying array set up in the room had purified the strange neutralizing power, so the cultivators in this room could absorb the world energy without restraint. However, Yang Kai soon discovered that something was wrong, because the world energy in this room was extremely thin, far from comparable to the world energy outside. It seemed that this spirit purifying array was not omnipotent. While purifying the neutralizing force, it also hindered the flow of world energy. Cultivating in such an environment, although one would not suffer the pain of neutralizing force, it was impossible to maintain one's cultivation. One could only slow down the speed at which one's cultivation retreated, unless there were other methods to restore source chi, such as source crystals. No wonder all the cultivator on this ship had insufficient auras, even though they were Dao source realm cultivators. But according to Yang Kai's observation, they couldn't display their full strength at all. "Do you want to stay or not?" the woman asked impatiently when she saw Yang Kai daydreaming. "Yes, of course." Yang Kai hurriedly nodded his head. Even though this spirit purifying array wasn't of a high grade and the room wasn't very good, it was still better than nothing. In any case, he didn't lack source crystals. After killing Yarrow Chang Jun, the source crystals he had harvested from his spatial ring numbered in the hundreds of millions. "I'll pay a month's rent first. When the time comes, I'll give you a refund if you overpaid or you underpaid." The woman stretched out her hand toward Yang Kai. Yang Kai had no objections and directly took out 40,000 source crystals and handed them to the woman. The woman quickly put the source crystals into her space ring and warned, "Don't run around if there's nothing important. We came out on a mission this time. Once we're done, We'll bring you back to Clear Sky Island. Young Kai nodded. Got it. Only then did the woman turn and walk out. When she reached the door, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. He turned to look at young Kai and said, "Are you curious why I brought you to this room to collect spirit stones?" Young Kai was startled, not understanding what she meant by asking this. The woman snorted and didn't continue speaking. Instead, she stretched out her hand to young Kai and said, "Give me another piece of spirit stone and I'll tell you why." The veins on young Kai's forehead bulged. He felt that this woman was really a moneygrubber, collecting spirit stones for everything she did. He calmly took out a piece of spirit stone and tossed it to the woman. The woman casually caught it. Then, she revealed a sarcastic smile and said, "Watch carefully." Saying so, she threw the spirit stone directly out of the room. With a ding-dong, the spirit stone fell on the corridor. What made young Kai's face change was that the source crystal was actually dissolving at an extremely fast speed. In less than 10 breaths, the entire piece of low-rank source crystal had disappeared without a trace, turning into world energy that disappeared without a trace. The woman coldly snorted and said, "You're new here, so what if you're new here? Stop pretending to be experienced." After saying so, she walked out and closed the door behind her. Young Kai's face turned red, knowing that his lie had been seen through by her. It should be that when he tried to give her the source crystals outside, she already knew that he wasn't a person from this world. Otherwise, how could she not even have such common sense? Brother. Liu Xianyun's pretty face also changed slightly. "That spirit stone." Young Kai said in disappointment, "Spirit stones probably can't be exposed outside the spirit purifying array, otherwise they will quickly disappear." The woman had asked him for the last spirit stone, obviously to test it out for him. "So, they know we're new here?" Young Kai smiled. "Of course they know, but it doesn't matter. Although that woman's character is a little cold, she's not a bad person. Let's rest first. We'll go back to Clear Sky Island with them and find a way to leave this place." "Oh." Liu Xianyun nodded and found a place to sit cross-legged in the room. On the deck, after the woman walked out, 2 men immediately rushed out from the side and surrounded her on both sides. The man on the left had a huge scar on his forehead that stretched from his cheekbone to the corner of his mouth, giving him a terrifying appearance. The man on the right had a large waist and a fierce aura. "Big Sister Ling, those two, are they staying?" The man on the left asked softly, his eyes flashing with a dangerous light. When he asked this question, he couldn't help licking the corner of his mouth, as if there was a delicious meal in front of him. Ling Yin-chin nodded lightly, glancing at this man and asking coldly, "Why are you asking about this?" The man on the right chuckled meaningfully, "Big Sister Ling, why ask when you already know the answer? That man and woman must have just arrived in the solitary void-sealed world, so they must have accidentally fallen here. Newcomers usually have a lot of good things on them." The man on the left also nodded, "That's right, Big Sister Ling. We only have a few dozen source crystals left. If we don't get more source crystals, our cultivation will regress. You know the situation on Clear Sky Island." 2 fat sheep suddenly appeared. "Heh, our brothers can't help it. Is this your idea, or everyone else's?" Ling Yin-chin stopped and asked in a deep voice. The man on the left scratched his head and said, "Although they didn't say anything, they definitely have the same idea. As long as Big Sister Ling gives the order, we'll rush over and capture them right now." "Bullshit." Ling Yin-chin shouted angrily, spitting saliva all over the scarred man's face, "Put away the greed in your hearts and don't cause trouble for me." The scarred man wiped his face with an embarrassed expression and cried, "Big Sister Ling, if you have something to say, just say it, don't spit at me." Ling Yin-chin coldly snorted, "How about I throw you into the sea to calm down?" The scarred man was startled and hurriedly waved his hand, "That's not necessary." Ling Yin-chin took a deep breath and said, "That man is not to be trifled with. Since you know that they are newcomers, you should also know that everyone who has just arrived here is not to be trifled with. They are not like us. After living here for a long time, our cultivation has regressed and we can't use our full strength. That man's cultivation is in the 3rd order Dao source realm. Who on this ship is his opponent? If we really fight with him, at least a few of us will die. Are you willing to see that happen?" The two men looked at each other and calmed down a lot, slowly shaking their heads. Ling Yin-chin said, "The first rule of survival in the solitary void-sealed world is to not engage in meaningless battles. You have to remember this. The source qi you consume is not easy to replenish." Yes, the two men seemed to be very obedient to Ling Yin-chin and responded seriously after hearing her words. "What's more, we still have a mission to complete this time. Don't worry, after we complete the mission, everyone will get source crystals and cultivation resources." As Ling Yin-chin spoke, she took off the space ring on her hand and handed it to the scarred man. "I just received 40,000 source crystals from that man. Take this and share it with everyone. Everyone should get quite a bit." 40,000. The two men were overjoyed when they heard this, as if 40,000 source crystals was a shocking amount of wealth to them. This kind of thing was simply unimaginable outside. Any Dao source realm cultivator would not put 40,000 low-rank source crystals in their eyes, but in the solitary void-sealed world, source crystals were a rare commodity. Cultivators lived here all year round, so they naturally consumed source crystals, but there were no source crystal mines here, so they could not make ends meet in the long run. Only some cultivator who had fallen into this place would bring source crystals with them. However, there were not many cultivator who fell into this place every year, and the amount of source crystals they brought with them was even more uncertain. How could it be enough for the hundreds of thousands of people in Clear Sky City? 40,000 source crystals was really a huge sum of money for the cultivator on this ship. But Ling Yin-chin did not hesitate to take it all out and share it with everyone. This was why she, a woman, could subdue the entire ship and make them listen to her orders. Ling Yin-chin never hid anything, and this kind of character was enough to earn the respect of everyone. Tell the brothers not to have any ideas about those two, and don't reveal their origins when we return to Clear Sky City. If you want source crystals, get them from them through proper means. This mission will take a lot of time, so if you use the right method, you may be able to get some source crystals, Ling Yin-chin warned them again. Ling Yin-chin couldn't help but remind him again. She was well aware of what kind of people her subordinates were. "Understood, Big Sister Ling." The two men were overjoyed when they heard this and immediately rushed to the cabin after exchanging a glance. Not long after, the scarred man returned the ring to Ling Yin-chin, saying, "Big Sister Ling, I left you 10,000 source crystals. The rest will be shared equally with everyone." Heh, everyone wants to thank Big Sister Ling for her tip. Ling Yin-chin snorted, "I'll thank the heavens if they don't cause trouble for me." No, absolutely not. The scarred man replied with a straight face. Chapter 2368. Yang Kai sat in the room for a while before there was a knock on the door. Liu Xianyun glanced at him, and after getting his signal, she opened the door. The scarred man they had seen on the deck before appeared at the door with a flattering smile, nodding and bowing to Liu Xianyun. "Hello, two guests, I hope I didn't disturb your peace?" Liu Xianyun asked, "What's the matter?" The scarred man smiled and said, "Big Sister ordered this little one to see if the two guests need anything. If there is anything you need, please don't hesitate to ask, we will try our best to satisfy you." Liu Xianyun was at a loss, not knowing why this guy was so attentive. As the saying goes, one who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. This made her a little vigilant. After all, she and Yang Kai were new here and didn't know much about the specific situation here, so naturally they had to be more careful. The scarred man said again, "This is some food prepared by our brothers for the two of you. There is nothing to serve on the ship, so I hope the two of you don't mind." Only then did Liu Xianyun notice that he was holding a tray in his hand. On the tray were 2 plates of side dishes and a jug of wine. She didn't know what kind of beast meat the side dishes were, but they smelled very fragrant. "Is he going to poison us?" Liu Xianyun's expression suddenly became strange. She wanted to refuse, but since the other party took the initiative to deliver it, it seemed a little inappropriate to refuse. In desperation, she could only look back at Yang Kai and ask for his opinion. "Come in and talk." Yang Kai didn't seem to care. Hearing this, the scarred man suddenly showed a happy expression. He said, "Sorry to disturb you." Only then did Liu Xianyun move away. She let the scarred man enter the room. The latter put the tray on the table and looked at Yang Kai eagerly. The flattering smile on his face never disappeared. Yang Kai smiled and said, "Is this food free or charged?" The scarred man smiled and scratched his head. "This is a little gift prepared by our brothers for the two of you. Naturally, there is no charge, but, hey, friend, you know." Liu Xianyun snorted, displeasure written all over her face. He felt that the people on this ship were all money grubbers. They actually had the nerve to charge for these two unknown side dishes and a pot of old wine that looked very inferior. She couldn't be bothered to look at it even if it was placed outside for her to eat. Yang Kai asked thoughtfully, "Is it difficult to obtain source crystals here?" The scarred man's face suddenly turned bitter. "Friend, if you live here for a long time, you will know that source crystals are the most precious thing here. If not, how could he be so thick-skinned as to come to Yang Kai to get source crystals?" "You can't get source crystals here?" Liu Xianyun asked suspiciously. The scarred man said, "You can't get it. This solitary void-sealed world is filled with disruption force everywhere. Once source crystals, which are pure energy, are exposed to disruption force, they will be destroyed. That's why there's no source crystal mine in this damned place. It's also because of this that the world energy in the solitary void-sealed world is so rich." Liu Xianyun had also seen the scene of the source crystal disappearing quickly, so she heard the scarred man's words. After hearing the scarred man's words, she naturally understood a lot. The disgust in her heart towards the cultivator on this ship also subsided a little. She now understood why they were all so greedy. The scarred man sighed. "The source crystals in the solitary void-sealed world are all brought in by the cultivator outside. Don't even think about finding any in this sealed world." Yang Kai nodded. It was just as he had guessed. When he saw the source crystal disappear, Yang Kai had a vague guess. Now, with the scarred man's explanation, he immediately understood that his guess was right. In this damned place, source crystals were really precious things. "What's your name?" Yang Kai asked. The scarred man quickly said, "Jiao Yi. Big sister calls me Old Jiao, you two can call me whatever you want. Brother Jiao, sit down. I have something to ask you." Yang Kai gestured as he took out a bag of source crystals from his space ring, placed it on the table, and pushed it in front of him. Jiao Yi's eyes immediately lit up, like a hungry ghost seeing food. He dragged the bag in front of him, opened it, and was almost blinded by the brilliance of the source crystals. He quickly put them into his space ring and said cheerfully, "Friend, feel free to ask. This old Jiao can even tell you the color of my underwear." Bah! Liu Xianyun spat, her face slightly red. Yang Kai smiled slightly and said, "To be honest, junior sister and I have just arrived here and know nothing about this place, so." Jiao Yi said, "We already knew this. Who in the solitary void-sealed world dares to take out source crystals outside? Just by looking at your actions, friend, we can tell that you're not familiar with the rules here." He was naturally referring to Yang Kai wanting to trade with Ling Yin-chin on the deck earlier. Yang Kai also understood that he must have been exposed, so there was no need to hide. In any case, the other party wanted source crystals, so he might as well use them to open a path and inquire about some information. Jiao Yi sighed and said, "As long as you live here for a year or so, you'll know how precious source crystals are. Old Jiao, let me give you a piece of advice. No matter how many source crystals you have, you must use them sparingly, otherwise, you'll run out one day." Back in the day, old Jiao had a few million source crystals on him and was considered a rich man, but now, he had a pained look on his face, as if he regretted squandering too much in the past. "How long has brother Jiao been here?" This question seemed to have touched Jiao Yi's sore spot. He picked up the inferior wine, poured himself a glass, and drank it in one gulp before wiping his mouth and saying, "I haven't counted carefully, but it should be 60 to 70 years, right? 60 to 70 years. Liu Xianyun's pretty face instantly paled. Jiao Yi glanced at her and said, "That's nothing. Some people have been trapped here for hundreds or even thousands of years. Is there no way out here?" Liu Xianyun asked. Jiao Yi frowned and said, "I'm not sure. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Old Jiao's strength is low, but even if there is a way out, it won't be so easy. Otherwise, Those old monsters in Clear Sky City would have left long ago. Why would they stay here and suffer? Yang Kai said. Brother Jiao also came in from the solitary Void Mountain Range. Solitary Void Mountain Range? Jiao Yi heard this and was at a loss, but after thinking for a while, he suddenly realized, oh, you mean the solitary Void Mountain Range at the border between the southern and eastern territories? I came from a place at the border between the western and northern territories. There are many places that lead to this place. Millimeter, that seems to be the case. There are people living on Heavenspan Island from all 4 of the major domains. Just the dozen or so people on this ship alone means that there are at least 10 people who came from different places. Why are there so many? Liu Xianyun was surprised. Jiao Yi spread his hands and said helplessly, I don't know. Yang Kai said thoughtfully, the entrances to this solitary void-sealed world are either moving, or there are many places. Brother Jiao, what's the situation with this Clear Sky Island you mentioned before? Jiao Yi said, Clear Sky Island is Clear Sky Island. All the cultivator in the solitary void-sealed world live on Clear Sky Island. The forces on the island are very complicated. If you go to Clear Sky Island in the future, Old Jiao advises you to quickly find a powerful force to join. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to survive here, especially for newcomers. Many people specifically target newcomers. You know why, right? Source crystals. Liu Xianyun said in a deep voice. Jiao Yi nodded. Yes, newcomers who come here will more or less have source crystals on them. People die for wealth and birds die for food. This is an unchanging truth. Yang Kai asked, are there masters from the Emperor realm guarding the island? Yes, more than one, Jiao Yi replied. Jiao Yi replied, about 3 to 5. The most powerful one is the Clear Sky Island Master, a third-order Emperor realm master. I heard that he has been here for thousands of years. Even a third-order Emperor realm master is trapped here. Liu Xianyun's pretty face paled, feeling more and more hopeless. Jiao Yi grinned meaningfully. What's so strange about that? If you can't find a way out, you naturally can't leave. However, the island master has been trapped here for so many years, and I heard that his cultivation has dropped drastically. He's only a second-order Emperor realm master now. I don't know if that's true or not. He sighed and continued, but it's true. As long as one lives here for a long time, whose cultivation doesn't drop. This old Jiao was a second-order Dao Source realm master before, but after so many years, I'm only a first-order Dao Source realm master now. Yang Kai frowned. You don't have source crystals, so how are you going to cultivate here? Jiao Yi replied, with the help of the spirit purifying array. The spirit purifying array in this room isn't of a high grade, so the cultivation effect isn't ideal. The higher the grade of the spirit purifying array, the better. When you reach Clear Sky City, I suggest you rent a cave mansion with a high-grade spirit purifying array. That way, you can slow down the decline of your cultivation to the greatest extent. Of course, in addition to the spirit purifying array, you can also take spirit pills, but spirit pills are extremely expensive. There aren't many alchemists on the island, and most of them are under the command of the island master. The price of a spirit pill here is more than 10 times more expensive than outside. Then how do you live? Liu Xianyun couldn't help but sympathize with Jiao Yi. It was really not easy to survive in such a harsh environment in this solitary void-sealed world. Jiao Yi smiled bitterly. We go out to hunt sea beasts and look for some other materials. The monster cores of sea beasts can generally be sold for a good price. We came out this time to look for something called grey feather coral. What's its use? Liu Xianyun asked. Jiao Yi explained. This thing is the main material used to refine the base of the spirit purifying array. If you want to live on Clear Sky Island, the spirit purifying array is essential, so grey feather coral is very popular. At this point, Jiao Yi's expression changed. Are you too interested in joining us? If you are, I can talk to Big Sister. I'm sure she won't refuse. As for the split, it'll be the same as us. You get what you put in. Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun were both newcomers, and their strength was still at its peak. Especially Yang Kai, who was the third-order Dao Source realm. If they could rope him in, they would definitely be able to return with a fruitful trip. Chapter 2369. Jiao Yi tried his best to persuade. We accidentally discovered that patch of grey feather coral 5 years ago, but there was a sea beast guarding it at that time, so we haven't been able to obtain it. But according to Big Sister's observation, that sea beast's lifespan is running out, so it must be dead by now. In other words, that patch of grey feather coral can be mined at will. After this trip, we won't have to go out to sea for at least a year. Yang Kai slowly shook his head and said, "Junior sister and I won't participate in this matter." He didn't lack source crystals at all, so naturally he didn't want to mine that grey feather coral. No matter what Jiao Yi said, he wouldn't be tempted. Jiao Yi saw this and didn't insist, only thinking that Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun should live here for a few more years to understand the value of the grey feather coral. At that time, there would be no need for him to persuade them as they would take the initiative to join. "By the way, how long will it take for you to return from this trip?" Yang Kai asked. Jiao Yi said, "About 3 days from our destination, and 2 to 3 days to mine. As for the return trip, it will take at least a month before we can return to Clear Sky Island." "So long." Yang Kai couldn't help frowning. Jiao Yi smiled bitterly. "The resources around Clear Sky Island are almost all mined, so if we want good things, we can only go farther. The risk is proportional to the benefit." Yang Kai nodded. "Then I wish you success." When Jiao Yi heard him say this, he tactfully stood up and said, "Then I won't disturb the two of you. If the two of you still need anything, just come and find me." "Good." Jiao Yi walked to the door. Suddenly, he said, "Right. When you two go to Clear Sky City in the future, you must first find a way to apply for an identity token, otherwise you won't be able to enter the city. However, applying for an identity token will expose your identity as newcomers. Do you want me to talk to Big Sister and ask her to think of a way? Although we aren't attached to any force, Big Sister's connections are quite good. She has a lot of connections, so maybe she can get it done." Yang Kai pondered for a moment before nodding. "Thank you, Brother Jiao." Jiao Yi smiled. "I'll let you know if there's any news." After Jiao Yi left, Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. This damned place could trap even a third-order Emperor Realm Master, so it was obvious that their chances of escaping were slim. Moreover, Jiao Yi's group obviously didn't know how to leave this place. He couldn't get any information from them. The only thing he could do now was to go to Clear Sky Island and make further plans. After sailing for 3 to 5 days, the ship suddenly stopped. Yang Kai released his telepathic thoughts and found that all the cultivator on the ship were standing on the deck, rubbing their palms together. He was full of drive. It seemed that they had arrived at their destination and were preparing to enter the sea to collect the grey feather coral. Yang Kai didn't pay attention to them. Instead, it was Jiao Yi who came over and asked Yang Kai again if he wanted to go with them. After being politely rejected by Yang Kai, Jiao Yi did not pester him further. After a short while, most of the people on the ship jumped off the deck and disappeared into the sea. It seemed that it was just as Jiao Yi had said before. The powerful sea beast guarding the grey feather coral in the depths of the sea had died. Ling Yinqin and the others went very smoothly. There were cultivator constantly drilling in and out of the sea, and everyone looked very excited. 4 days later, when all the cultivator returned from the sea, no one else went into the sea. Yang Kai didn't pay too much attention to their movements, but occasionally, he could hear some of their conversations. From the scattered chatter, Yang Kai learned that they had gained a lot on this trip, even more than Ling Yinqin had expected. There were no casualties among the crew, and they had gained so many benefits effortlessly just by going out to sea. Every crew member had a smile on their face, and even Ling Yinqin, who had always been cold, showed a rare smile. After waiting for half a day, the ship turned around and slowly set sail. It seemed that they were going to return. Yang Kai finally relaxed. He was really afraid that Ling Yinqin and the others would encounter some kind of danger at sea. If that really happened, no one would take him to Clear Sky Island. Now that everything was safe and sound, Yang Kai naturally wanted to see it. The days passed peacefully. Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun stayed in their room and didn't go out. Ling Yinqin seemed to be very satisfied with their cooperation and honesty, so she didn't disturb them. Instead, It was Jiao Yi who brought them food and drinks from time to time. 7 days later, Yang Kai, who was meditating, suddenly opened his eyes. In the next moment, he released his divine sense and poured it into the sealed world bead to connect with his embodiment. "What's the matter?" Yang Kai asked. Just now, the embodiment had sent him a message and seemed to be in a hurry, so he didn't know what had happened. "That girl Ruo Shi is about to break through," the embodiment replied immediately. "Ruo Shi is about to break through?" Yang Kai raised his brow and said, "That's good news." "Good news my ass," the embodiment shouted. Yang Kai also suddenly realized something and his expression changed. Dao Source Realm? He remembered that Zhong Ruo Shi should be a third-order origin king. If she broke through again, she would be a Dao Source Realm cultivator. That's right. I don't know what's going on with this girl, but her strength is increasing so quickly. How long has it been? She's about to break through to the Dao Source Realm. Yang Kai suddenly understood the seriousness of the problem and quickly flew into the sealed world bead. Somewhere in the sealed world bead, Zhong Ruo Shi was sitting cross-legged. Her aura was fluctuating and the Saint Qi in her body was flowing like a river. It was obvious that she was on the verge of a breakthrough. If it was outside, there would be no problem for her to break through like this, but this was the sealed world bead. The world principles here were not perfect. Zhong Ruo Shi could cultivate here normally, but breaking through to a great realm involved a baptism of world energy. The comprehension of world principles could not be provided by the sealed world bead. In other words, it was impossible for Zhong Ruo Shi to break through to the Dao Source realm in the sealed world bead. If she was left alone, she would only fail. Once she failed, Zhong Ruo Shi's martial Dao would come to an end. She might even suffer a backlash and die. Yang Kai's face suddenly turned ugly. There was a vast sea outside, and the environment of the solitary void-sealed world was so strange. He didn't know if Zhong Ruo Shi could break through if he took her outside. Even if he took her outside, where would she break through? Beside Zhong Ruo Shi, Hua Qing Sai and Liu Yang were standing there with solemn expressions. Noticing his arrival, the two women hurried over. "How long has this been going on?" Yang Kai asked. "It has just begun," Hua Qing Sai replied, "but looking at this girl's appearance, I'm afraid she can't be suppressed. If she forcibly suppresses it, it will only damage her foundation." "Master, what should we do now?" Liu Yang was completely at a loss. They both knew about Yang Kai's current situation, so they really couldn't think of a good way to solve Zhong Ruo Shi's current situation. "Keep an eye on her for a while, I'll think of a way," Yang Kai said and immediately left the sealed world bead. Zhong Ruo Shi had just realized the opportunity to break through, so she could probably hold on for a while longer, but she definitely couldn't hold on for too long. He had to find a solution before the time limit was up. Inside the room, Yang Kai appeared again and rushed out. Liu Xianyun was confused. She didn't know what Yang Kai was going to do in such a hurry, so she quickly stood up and followed him out. Inside the cabin, Ling Yinqin was meditating and cultivating. It was really beyond her expectations to have such a big harvest on this trip out to sea. After returning, she wouldn't have to come out for at least 2 to 3 years, so she was in a relatively good mood. Just as she was thinking about which great force to sell the grey feather coral to when she returned, the door was suddenly slammed open with a bang. Ling Yinqin turned pale with fright and jumped up from her spot, yelling, "Who's there?" She was the boss of this ship, so no crew member would dare to rush in without warning her, so Ling Yinqin's first reaction was that she had encountered an enemy. But after seeing the face of the person who came in, Ling Yinqin immediately gritted her teeth and said, "What are you doing?" She was furious and secretly rejoiced that she hadn't been comprehending any secret art or secret technique just now, otherwise, wouldn't all her efforts have been for naught after being interrupted by Yang Kai? This person had been very well behaved since arriving on the ship. Ling Yinqin originally thought that he was a good person, but now, she found him to be extremely repulsive. Yang Kai also knew that he was being rude, but this was related to Zhong Ruo Shi's life and future, so he could only cup his fists and say, "Big sister Ling, right? I have some urgent matters to attend to, so please forgive me." He had heard Ling Yinqin's name from the crew members' conversations. "What's wrong?" A burst of exclamations came from the corridor. Obviously, The noise of Yang Kai slamming the door had attracted the crew members. When everyone saw Yang Kai standing at the door and Ling Yinchin's angry face, they were all shocked. Jiao Yi stood in the crowd and blinked, saying in amazement, "Brother Yang, why did you slam into our big sister's door? Brat, could it be that you covet big sister's beauty and want to use force? What? How could such a thing happen? Damn it, brat, you're courting death. You're not satisfied with having a junior sister and actually have ideas about big sister? See if I don't cripple you today." The group of people clamored and the scene suddenly became very lively. Yang Kai's face darkened and he hurriedly cupped his fists to Ling Yinchin. "This one really has an urgent matter. Please forgive me." Big sister Ling Yinchin gritted her teeth and glared at Yang Kai. Although she was still angry in her heart, seeing that his expression didn't seem to be fake, she coldly snorted and said, "What's so urgent that you don't even know how to knock on the door? Didn't your master teach you etiquette?" Yang Kai was reprimanded, but he didn't dare to talk back and could only say, "I just want to ask big sister Ling, what should I do if I want to break through outside?" "Break through?" Ling Yinchin heard this and her expression changed. "Break through to a great realm?" "Yes." Yang Kai nodded. As soon as these words came out, Ling Yinchin's mind buzzed and her face filled with shock. She thought that Yang Kai was about to break through. Yang Kai was in the third order Dao Source realm, so if he broke through, wouldn't that mean he would become an Emperor Realm Master? Chapter 2370. There were only a few emperors on Clear Sky Island. Ling Yinchin never thought that a random person she met on the way would have the potential to break through to the Emperor Realm. Once this Yang Kai broke through to the Emperor Realm, he would definitely be able to occupy a seat on Clear Sky Island and even shelter them. But only those who had lived in the solitary void-sealed world for a long time would know that this place was simply a cultivator's grave. The cultivator who lived here would be lucky if their cultivation didn't regress with the passage of time. Even if they were lucky enough to find an opportunity to break through, there were very few who succeeded. Ling Yinchin had seen too many people fail to break through in this damned place, losing their cultivation and becoming crippled. So, after the initial shock, Ling Yinchin looked at Yang Kai sympathetically. She could see that Yang Kai wasn't very old. Being able to reach the third order Dao Source realm was enough to show that his aptitude wasn't bad. In the outside world, he should be a young talent of some sect, a rising star. In time, he might be able to glimpse the mysteries of the Emperor realm. But here, the possibility of failure was very high. Yang Kai looked anxious. He didn't know why Ling Yinchin was looking at him with sympathy. Seeing that she didn't answer for a long time, he asked again, "Big sister Ling, do you have a good plan? Do you really want to break through?" Ling Yinchin couldn't bear it and suggested, "If you aren't confident, I suggest you sever your cultivation and don't break through in the solitary void-sealed world." Yang Kai was stunned and asked subconsciously, "Why?" Jiao Yi said, "Brother Yang, the solitary void-sealed world isn't a suitable place for breaking through. You also know that this world is filled with infinite disruption force. 90% of those who dare to break through here fail. Big sister is thinking for you." Yang Kai was really shocked this time. He had thought that this place wasn't a good place to break through, but he didn't expect it to be so serious. Right now, Zhong Ruoshi's aura was unstable and couldn't be suppressed at all. If she severed her cultivation like Ling Yinchin said, then Zhong Ruoshi would never be able to break through to the Dao Source realm. They could only remain in the Origin King realm for the rest of their lives. Because this was the end of one's own martial path, there were no pills that could cure it. The other crew members also looked at Yang Kai sympathetically, as if they felt that he had encountered a great misfortune. As for the matter of him crashing into Ling Yinchin's door, he didn't hold it against him anymore. It was simply too cruel to haggle over such trivial matters with a person whose martial path was about to come to an end. Yang Kai only hesitated for a moment before his expression hardened. "Big sister Ling, please give me some pointers." Seeing how insistent he was, Ling Yinchin knew that it was useless to dissuade him, so she could only say, "I have a high-grade spirit purifying array here. Perhaps I can lend you a hand." There were a total of 4 grades of spirit purifying array: low, intermediate, high, and peak. While chatting with Jiao Yi over the past few days, Yang Kai learned that the spirit purifying array set up in these rooms on the ship was of a low level. This was because the higher the grade of a spirit purifying array, the more expensive it was. The price of a higher grade was almost 10 times more expensive. Ling Yinqin and her group were considered the lowest level of cultivator in the solitary void-sealed world, so they didn't have the financial resources to hire someone to set up a more powerful spirit purifying array. Yang Kai also didn't expect her to have a high-grade spirit purifying array. The higher the grade of the spirit purifying array, the better the effect it would have on the cultivator. This spirit purifying array was like a net. While it filtered out the neutralizing force between heaven and earth, it also blocked the flow of world spirit chi. Therefore, no matter how dense the world spirit chi was, wherever the spirit purifying array was set up, the world spirit chi would be relatively thin. The higher the grade of the spirit purifying array, the less it hindered the flow of world energy. The denser the world energy, the better the effect of a cultivator's cultivation would be. Yang Kai was overjoyed and hurriedly said, "Many thanks, Big Sister Ling." Hearing that Ling Yinqin was going to take out the high-grade spirit purifying array, the crew members couldn't help but change their expressions. Jiao Yi even whispered, "Big Sister, that spirit purifying array." Ling Yinqin interrupted him and took out a set of array flags and foundations from her space ring, handing them to Yang Kai. "If you really can't do it, don't force yourself." She also stuffed a jade slip into Yang Kai's hands and continued, "This is the method to set up the array. It's very simple, you'll understand once you take a closer look." "I'll remember it." Yang Kai nodded seriously. Although he didn't know the origins of this high-grade spirit purifying array, he could tell from the crew's expressions that this thing was extremely precious to Ling Yinqin. Otherwise, she wouldn't have never used it before. But as far as Yang Kai knew, Ling Yinqin's room only had a low-grade spirit purifying array. He didn't know the story behind this high-grade spirit purifying array, but he secretly decided to compensate Ling Yinqin after this matter was settled. "I'll have to trouble Big Sister Ling again. Are there any islands nearby?" Yang Kai asked. Ling Yinqin raised her head and said to a cultivator with a full beard, "Give me the sea map." The cultivator immediately took out a piece of animal skin from his space ring and spread it out in front of Ling Yinqin. Yang Kai also leaned over to take a look, but he couldn't quite understand it. Ling Yinqin's gaze swept over the sea map for a while before she reached out and pointed at a location, saying in a deep voice, 500 kilometers to the southeast, there is a small island." Yang Kai cupped his fists and said, "Many thanks." As soon as he finished speaking, his figure flickered and he disappeared. Everyone was startled, and even Ling Yinqin's beautiful face paled. No one understood how Yang Kai left. Although she knew that Yang Kai was a third-order Dao Source Realm cultivator, she didn't expect him to be so strong. Just based on the superb method of disappearing just now, Ling Yinqin couldn't spy on Yang Kai at all. If such a person wanted to kill her, she wouldn't be able to defend herself at all. For a moment, Ling Yinqin secretly rejoiced that she didn't let the crew provoke Yang Kai. Otherwise, they wouldn't even know how they died. "Brother, he is breaking through to the Emperor realm?" Suddenly, someone murmured from the side. Ling Yinqin looked up and saw Liu Xianyun standing in place with a worried expression. She had followed Yang Kai out of the room and had heard the conversation just now clearly, so she couldn't help but be a little shocked. Unlike Ling Yinqin, who didn't know Yang Kai very well, Liu Xianyun had been meditating with Yang Kai these days and hadn't noticed any signs of him breaking through, so why was he suddenly breaking through to the Emperor realm? But after the shock, she was deeply worried because Ling Yinqin had made it very clear that breaking through in the solitary void-sealed world wasn't a good thing. "Big Sister Ling, my brother, he..." Liu Xianyun looked at Ling Yinqin. The latter sighed and said truthfully, "The chances are very small. It's basically impossible for him to succeed." Liu Xianyun's face turned pale and she almost couldn't stand still. Kai Yang was such a talented person, yet he was going to be defeated in this damned place. And the root of all this was her. If they hadn't met by chance in Marsh City, Yang Kai wouldn't have stood up for her, and he wouldn't have attracted an old monster like Yarrow Changjun. He wouldn't have been chased to the solitary void mountain range and swallowed up by the solitary void-sealed world. The more Liu Xianyun thought about it, the more she felt sorry for young Kai. She felt that if he really failed to break through and became a cripple or died, it would be all her fault. Big sister, that spirit purifying array was left to you by Big Brother Ju, how could you? Jiao Yi looked at Ling Yin-chin sadly. Ling Yin-chin said, he needs it urgently, so it's not a big deal to lend it to him. Jiao Yi said, but what if he destroys it? If you want to break through, I will lend it to you. The group of crew members knew that Ling Yin-chin wasn't lying. Her personality was like this, cold on the outside but warm on the inside. Young Kai was just a hitchhiker who had nothing to do with her, but she still lent the precious spirit purifying array to young Kai. However, the value of that spirit purifying array didn't lie in its value, but in its significance to Ling Yin-chin. So, even though everyone knew that Ling Yin-chin had a high-grade spirit purifying array, they never asked her to take it out for them to use. Everyone just stayed inside the low-grade spirit purifying array and cultivated slowly, slowing down the speed of their cultivation regression. Pass down the order to wait here for a few days. You can all go back. Ling Yin-chin waved her hand and ordered them to leave. The dozen or so crew members looked at each other and didn't dare to say anything more, so they left one after another. Brother Jiao, the big brother Ju you mentioned just now, who is he? Liu Xianyun followed Jiao Yi to the room and asked. Jiao Yi said, his big sister's partner. Back then, big sister and big brother Ju fell into this place together and brought us along. Later, when they went out to sea, big brother Ju was killed by a sea beast while protecting everyone. Before he died, the only thing he left behind was that spirit purifying array, which he bought by selling his own artifact. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't have a suitable artifact, big brother Ju wouldn't have died. Speaking of the past, Jiao Yi's mood became slightly agitated and he clenched his fists. Obviously, he had received a lot of care from Big Brother Ju and had long regarded him as family. Big Brother Ju was really good to big sister Ling, Liu Xianyun said in a slight daze. For the sake of his partner, he was willing to sell his own artifact to buy a spirit purifying array. This approach seemed stupid, but who could criticize it? Now you should know how precious that spirit purifying array is to big sister, right? Jiao Yi gritted his teeth. If your brother destroys that spirit purifying array, this old Jiao will be the first to not let him off. Although Jiao Yi and Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun had been chatting happily these days and had even obtained a lot of source crystals from Yang Kai, when it came to the high-grade spirit purifying array, he still firmly stood on Ling Yin-chin's side. After venting his anger, Jiao Yi said with some annoyance, I'm sorry, this old Jiao has a bad temper. I shouldn't have said this to you, but I don't know if your brother will be able to return safely. It's fine, I understand brother Jiao's feelings. Liu Xianyun waved her hand. She couldn't help fantasizing that if Yang Kai left something for her, no matter how valuable it was, she would definitely treasure it. Chapter 2371. While Yang Kai was flying towards the island, his mind was immersed in the jade slip given to him by Ling Yin-chin, looking for the method to arrange the spirit purifying array. Although he hadn't come into contact with the Tao of spirit arrays, the records in this jade slip were extremely detailed and easy to understand. What's more, with the array base and array flags, it shouldn't be difficult to arrange it. Yang Kai arrived at the short 500-kilometer journey in a dozen breaths, and this was when he deliberately slowed down to study the jade slip. Otherwise, with his divine technique of space, he could have arrived in 3 breaths of time. Looking ahead, there was indeed a veritable island in front of him. It was only about 1,000 meters in radius, and not a single blade of grass grew on it. It looked like it was formed by reefs. The sky was clear and cloudless, and the sea was also quiet. Yang Kai hurriedly landed and began to arrange the spirit array according to the records in the jade slip. After about the time it would take to drink a cup of tea, he finally finished setting it up. A faint layer of light suddenly enveloped the entire island, purifying the world energy, but the world energy also weakened by several levels. It seemed that even a high-grade spirit purifying array couldn't allow all the world energy to rush in. Based on this, even a top-grade spirit purifying array wouldn't be very effective. Time was of the essence, so he only checked the spirit array a little. After confirming that it was fine, He waved his hand and released Zhong Ruoshi from the small sealed world. "Sir, I've caused you trouble again." Zhong Ruoshi's expression was difficult, and her aura was restless like boiling water. As soon as she appeared, she apologized to Yang Kai with a face full of guilt. She obviously knew about Yang Kai's current situation. Yang Kai waved his hand and said, "Don't think too much. Calm your mind. Breaking through is more important. I'll protect you from the side and eliminate all distracting thought." Zhong Ruoshi gently nodded, closed her beautiful eyes, and formed a seal with her hands, silently comprehending. After a while, the aura floating around her body became more and more fierce, and the saint chi in her body also became more and more violent. The world energy around her. It was as if it had been given life, and it rushed into her body. However, due to the hindrance of the spirit purifying array, the surrounding world energy was obviously insufficient to meet the requirements for her breakthrough, leaving Zhong Ruoshi in a dilemma. Seeing this, Yang Kai did not hesitate to take out a large number of source crystals from his space ring. With a shake of his chi, the source crystals were reduced to dust and turned into rich world energy that filled the small island. With the help of these source crystals, the bitter expression on Zhong Ruoshi's face finally eased a lot. Yang Kai continuously took out source crystals and shattered them. In just a short while, the world energy on the island was so dense that it turned into a mist, obscuring the entire island. Even though Yang Kai was 10 meters away from Zhong Ruoshi, he couldn't see her figure clearly. When Yang Kai felt that it was about time, he stopped. As for Zhong Ruoshi, ever since her bloodline power awakened, she had become much stronger. It was as if he had become a completely different person. Her aptitude was indescribably good, and every time she cultivated, it was as if she was swallowing the heaven-devouring Great Emperor's world energy. It was for this reason that her cultivation could improve so quickly. Back then, the patriarch of the Zhong family, Zhong Jiaoxian, obtained a Dao source fruit from the 5-colored treasure pagoda, but he was seriously injured by someone. Before he died, he asked Yang Kai to go to the Zhong family in exchange for the Dao source fruit and made Yang Kai promise to leave a Dao source pill for the descendants of the Zhong family. Yang Kai went, but at that time, Zhong Ruoshi was only a saint king. In just a few years, she had broken through to the Dao source realm. That Dao source pill was prepared for Zhong Ruoshi. Yang Kai still kept it, but it seemed that he didn't need it at all. Over the past few years, the young and inexperienced little girl had grown into a slender and elegant young woman. For a moment, Yang Kai couldn't help but feel emotional. The whistling sound kept coming, and Zhong Ruoshi seemed to have turned into a bottomless pit, constantly swallowing the world energy on the island. After a while, the rich world energy became thin again. Yang Kai had to take out more source crystals and shatter them. After 3 times, Yang Kai estimated that he had consumed at least 10 million source crystals. Zhong Ruoshi suddenly snorted softly, and then an indescribable aura suddenly rippled out. "She's about to break through." Seeing this, Yang Kai didn't dare to stay in place anymore. He rushed out of the island at a moderate distance and paid close attention to Zhong Ruoshi's movements. This position ensured that he wouldn't interfere with Zhong Ruoshi's breakthrough, and also ensured that he could rescue her in time if something happened to her. At this stage, Zhong Ruoshi's breakthrough was going smoothly because of the 10 million source crystals he had, but Yang Kai knew that the real difficulty had yet to come. For Zhong Ruoshi, the most difficult hurdle right now was the world energy baptism. The world energy here was full of infinite disruption power. If she absorbed it into her body, who knew what would happen? But if she didn't absorb it, she wouldn't be able to break through. This was a dilemma. Hong long long, a buzzing sound came from the sky, and the originally cloudless sky suddenly changed. The entire sky was pitch black, and above the small island, a huge inky cloud suddenly formed. It slowly rotated and converged into a vortex. Within the inky cloud, lightning flashed and thunder roared, revealing the might of the heavenly Tao. Yang Kai couldn't help but feel nervous and looked up at the sky. At the same time, on the deck of a ship 500 kilometers away, a group of cultivators stood there and pointed in the direction of the island. In their opinion, this heavenly manifestation was obviously caused by Yang Kai, but they didn't know who it was. In Ling Yin Qin's room, She leaned against the window and looked into the distance. A look of surprise flashed in her eyes as she muttered to herself, "He actually caused a heavenly manifestation." Causing a heavenly manifestation meant that he would be baptized by world energy, and there really was a glimmer of hope for a successful breakthrough. Ling Yin-chin suddenly felt that she seemed to have underestimated Yang Kai a little. Previously, she had said that Yang Kai's chances of breaking through were very low, but now it seemed that he really did have some confidence. However, what puzzled Ling Yin-chin was that the power of this heavenly manifestation was a little off, because it obviously felt a little smaller. Although Ling Yin-chin had never seen a cultivator break through to the Emperor realm, it obviously shouldn't be this small. In another room, Liu Xianyun was also looking out the window with a worried and nervous expression, but she didn't dare to rush over to take a look. She could only put her hands together and kneel on the ground, praying devoutly to the heavens. At the same time, 10,000 kilometers away, on the sea, there was also a ship sailing slowly. Although it was 10,000 kilometers away, the people on the ship still noticed the heavenly manifestation. A moment later, the ship suddenly changed its direction and sailed in the direction of the small island. It was obvious that it was here to investigate. Above the island, dark clouds were as thick as mountains, and thunder rumbled incessantly. Suddenly, a heavenly manifestation blasted towards the island from the sky. Looking at its trajectory, it seemed to be about to fall on Zhong Ruoshi's head. Yang Kai's expression changed slightly, but he resisted the urge to help. Hong Long. There was a loud noise as the heavenly manifestation blasted directly into the island. The spirit-purifying array that Yang Kai had set up on the island suddenly collapsed, and the array flags hidden around it were damaged. At the same time, the light that shrouded the island disappeared. This high-grade spirit-purifying array was destroyed just like that. Before the heavenly manifestation could fall on Zhong Ruoshi's head, her delicate body shook, and a huge phantom suddenly appeared behind her. Yang Kai's eyes widened as he stared at it. It wasn't the first time he had seen this phantom. Back in the Four Seasons realm, it had appeared when Zhong Ruoshi broke through to a great realm, but Yang Kai never knew what this phantom was. He only guessed that it had a lot to do with Zhong Ruoshi's bloodline power. Now, looking at it again, the phantom was even more solid than the last time. What made Yang Kai feel strange was that he couldn't see it clearly. He only knew that this phantom was a huge woman, 20 to 30 meters tall, even bigger than Xiao Xiao after his transformation. She held a giant sword in both hands, her head reached the sky, and her feet touched the ground, giving off a strong visual impact. Although she was huge, this woman was definitely not ugly. She was like a stunning beauty that had been magnified countless times. No matter which part of her body it was, she was perfect and flawless. She was like Zhong Ruoshi's guardian, suddenly appearing behind Zhong Ruoshi. She was valiant and heroic, as if even if there were thousands of soldiers and horses, she would still be able to stop them. When the heavenly manifestation blasted down and fell into her body, it was like a stone sinking into the sea, not causing the slightest ripple. In the next moment, the phantom raised her head, stared at the sky, opened her mouth, and gently inhaled. The power gathered in the sky was directly sucked into her mouth, and in just 3 breaths, the dark sky became clear again, and the sea returned to its calm state. Even though he had seen it once, Yang Kai was still shocked and speechless for a long time. When a cultivator broke through to a great realm, it was common sense to be baptized by heavenly manifestation. No one could avoid it. If one could withstand it, they could peek into the mysteries of the next realm. If not, they would either die or be crippled. Yang Kai had been like this for so many years. But compared to Zhong Ruoshi's breakthrough, Yang Kai felt that his breakthrough was simply too weak. It was on a completely different level. Just as his thoughts were running wild, the huge phantom flashed into Zhong Ruoshi's body. In the next moment, the aura of the Tao Source realm spread out from Zhong Ruoshi's body. Her bones creaked as the power in her body surged fiercely. Yang Kai was secretly anxious. He didn't know if there was a problem with the phantom swallowing the heavenly manifestation. After all, the world energy in this world was full of infinite disruption force. When the phantom swallowed the power of the heaven-devouring great emperor, it must have also swallowed the disruption force. He carefully observed Zhong Ruoxi's reaction and secretly decided to bring her into the sealed world bead if there was anything wrong. But no matter how he looked, Zhong Ruoxi didn't show any expression of discomfort. Instead, she had a happy expression, as if she was happy about her breakthrough. She was still sitting there, forming seals with her hands. This made Yang Kai confused. He couldn't understand the situation. Chapter 2372. 500 kilometers away, Ling Yinqin sighed inwardly. Did he really fail? The heavenly manifestation suddenly disappeared, which was obviously a sign of a failed breakthrough. She didn't know whether Yang Kai was alive or dead. She secretly felt sorry for Yang Kai. Although she wasn't familiar with Yang Kai, seeing a cultivator's path to Dao seeking come to an end made her feel sad. Inside the room, Liu Xianyun, who was kneeling on the ground and praying devoutly, suddenly collapsed to the ground, her pretty face pale and bloodless. After a long while, she gritted her teeth, stood up, and rushed outside. Whether Yang Kai was alive or dead, she had to find him. If he was alive, she wanted to see him, and if he was dead, she wanted to see his corpse. She felt that if it weren't for her, Yang Kai wouldn't have suffered such misfortune. With his aptitude, he would definitely be able to laugh proudly in the star boundary in the future and become an overlord. Liu Xianyun had just rushed to the deck when she suddenly saw a huge ship approaching. This ship was much larger and grander than the ship Ling Yinqin and the others were on, and it braved the wind and waves without the slightest sign of life. Liu Xianyun didn't know when it had approached, but by the time she noticed it, the two ships were already very close to each other. She looked up and saw that the deck of the opposite ship was filled with cultivators under the leadership of a purple-robed man. They were all glaring at the ship below, clearly harboring malicious intentions. Only then did Ling Yinqin and the others realize what was happening. They ran out of their cabins one after another, and when they saw the sail symbol on the opposite ship, their faces sank. Liu Xianyun was worried about Yang Kai's life and death, so she didn't have the leisure to pay attention to these things. She leaped up and was about to fly out. But the face of the purple-robed man on the opposite ship sank. He waved his hand, and without moving, a palm print swept over. On the island, Yang Kai waited until Zhong Ruoxi opened her eyes before slowly flying over and landing in front of her. He hurriedly asked, "Do you feel any discomfort?" "Discomfort?" Zhong Ruoxi wore a blank look and shook her head, "No." Then, her face lit up with joy and she said innocently, "Sir, I broke through to the Dao Source realm." A few years ago, she had never thought that she would one day be able to break through to the Dao Source realm and stand at such a high level. After all, the strongest member of the Zhong family back then was only a third-order origin king. Her family had not produced a Dao Source realm cultivator for many years, but since Yang Kai took her away from the Zhong family, her cultivation had risen steadily. He had grown at an inconceivable speed. In just a few years, he had achieved a feat that the ancestors of the Zhong family had never been able to achieve. Such a level of cultivation was enough to establish a firm foothold in Maplewood City. Zhong Ruoxi was extremely grateful to Yang Kai. She knew that if Yang Kai had not provided her with such a good and stable cultivation environment, she would not have been able to do such a thing. She also knew that if Yang Kai had not unearthed her cultivation talent, she would not have been able to do such a thing. Even if she cultivated for the rest of her life, she could forget about prying into the mysteries of the Dao Source realm. But now, she was only 17 years old, but she was already a Dao Source realm master. She still had a lot of good years ahead of her. She might even have the opportunity to reach the Emperor realm and pry into the secrets of the great emperors. Zhong Ruoxi's heart throbbed. "Give me your hand." Yang Kai came to her side. Although he did not notice anything unusual about Zhong Ruoxi, he was still a little worried and wanted to examine her carefully. Zhong Ruoxi blushed slightly and stretched out her white lotus-like hand. Yang Kai put his finger on it. He pushed a trace of source qi into her body and examined her carefully. After a short while, Yang Kai's body shook as he looked at Zhong Ruoxi in surprise and whispered, How is this possible? What's wrong, sir? Is there something wrong with Ruoxi?" Zhong Ruoxi was startled when she saw his ugly expression and suddenly became anxious. No. Yang Kai hurriedly shook his head, fearing that he would frighten her, but his brow furrowed more and more. His face was full of surprise, as if he had seen something extremely incomprehensible. Zhong Ruo, she did not move at all. She could only feel Yang Kai's source qi flowing around her body. Although Yang Kai did not touch any of her private parts, this feeling still made Zhong Ruo blush, and she quickly lowered her head to her chest. But she also knew that Yang Kai was checking the situation in her body and did not have any bad intentions. After a short while, Yang Kai withdrew his finger and looked at Zhong Ruo strangely. "Sir, what's wrong with me?" Zhong Ruo asked in a low voice. "You're very good," Yang Kai replied, "so good that it's hard to believe." Yang Kai thought that Zhong Ruo would definitely be affected by the disruption force here after breaking through to the Dao Source realm in this damned place. He was prepared to take this girl to the small sealed world to heal, but now, after checking, Yang Kai found that there was no trace of disruption force in her body. The infinite disruption force that filled this world seemed to have completely evaporated after entering her body. That was not all. Although it was hard to believe, it was not enough to make Yang Kai lose his composure. The most important thing was that Yang Kai found that the power in Zhong Ruo's body was actually rich source qi, not saint qi. After a cultivator broke through to the Dao Source realm, their power would begin to gradually transform from saint qi into source qi. It took Yang Kai nearly a year to complete the transformation, and this was under the premise of taking a large number of source condensing pills. For example, although Kai Yu, Gui Zhu, Jiyu Kangyun, and the others were now in the first order Dao Source realm, the power in their bodies had not been completely transformed, and this was also the case for Liu Xianyun. Transforming source qi was an extremely long process. Any cultivator who had just broken through to the Dao Source realm would need at least 3 to 5 years to complete this transformation, and this was for a cultivator with good aptitude. For those with slightly worse aptitude, it was possible to take 8 to 10 years. Only by transforming all the power in one's body into source qi would one's foundation in the Dao Source realm be completely stabilized, and there would be hope for one to break through to the second order Dao Source realm. Yang Kai watched Zhong Ruo break through on this island with his own eyes, but in such a short time, Zhong Ruo had already completed what would take an ordinary person several years to complete. There was no trace of saint qi in her body. What filled her tender body was pure and vigorous source qi. In other words, Zhong Ruo had completed the complete transformation of her source qi the moment she broke through. Yang Kai really couldn't figure out how such a strange thing could happen. Fortunately, this wasn't the only strange thing that had happened to Zhong Ruo. After thinking about it, Yang Kai could only attribute it to her bloodline. After all, Zhong Ruo's bloodline was really extraordinary and seemed to be hiding a great secret. However, Yang Kai didn't dare to take it lightly. He let Zhong Ruo continue to carefully examine her body's condition on this island. After confirming that there were no hidden dangers, he took her back into the sealed world bead and instructed Liu Yang and Hua Qing-sai to explain the mysteries of the Dao Source realm to her and assist her in her future cultivation. The island was still the same, but the high-grade spirit purifying array arranged on this island was damaged. After Yang Kai collected the set of array base and array flags, a bitter look appeared on his face. He still didn't know how to explain it to Ling Yin-chin when he returned. This high-grade spirit purifying array seemed to be an extremely precious thing to her. Yang Kai didn't know if Ling Yin-chin would be angry at him for ruining it. Yang Kai checked the array base and array flags and found that they were seriously damaged. His expression became even more bitter. With a sigh, he put away these things and turned around to return. After a while, a strange look appeared on his face as he stared at the 2 ships anchored in the sea, his brow furrowing slightly. Of these 2 ships, one of them was naturally Ling Yin-chin's, while the other was even larger than the other one he had never seen before. It was obvious that it had come here when he was helping Zhong Ruo break through. In the vast sea, the chances of these 2 ships running into each other were extremely low. The reason this large ship came here was probably because of the heavenly manifestation brought about by Zhong Ruo's breakthrough. That was because the bow of the ship was pointing in the direction of the small island that he had come from. The large ship was 2 to 3 times larger than Ling Yin-chin's ship, so when the 2 ships were placed side by side, they looked like a grandfather and grandson. Before Yang Kai could get close, He heard a commotion coming from the other side, causing his expression to sink. His figure flickered and he landed directly on the deck. Looking up, he saw Ling Yinqin and a dozen or so other crew members standing on the deck facing off against another group of people under her leadership. Ling Yinqin and the others looked angry, but the other side looked relaxed and indifferent, as if they didn't put Ling Yinqin and the others in their eyes at all. Meanwhile, Liu Xianyun was being guarded by the crew members behind her. Yang Kai saw that there was a red handprint on Liu Xianyun's pretty face, as if she had been slapped hard. There was even a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth that hadn't dried up yet. Yang Kai's face suddenly became gloomy. He didn't know what happened on this ship, nor did he know who the other group of people were, but it was obvious that Liu Xianyun was beaten up by these people who had just arrived. His sudden appearance obviously alarmed the two groups of people who were confronting each other. Liu Xianyun was the first to turn her head, and when she saw Yang Kai, she immediately forgot about her situation and shouted in a trembling voice, "Brother!" Her beautiful eyes constantly swept over Yang Kai, fearing that she would discover something that would worry her. After confirming that Yang Kai was safe and sound, without missing an arm or a leg, she let out a heavy sigh of relief. "You're actually fine?" Ling Yinqin also had a surprised expression on her face. Just now, Yang Kai must have caused a heavenly manifestation. Even though she was 500 kilometers away, she could still see it clearly. However, that heavenly manifestation only lasted for 5 breaths before it suddenly disappeared, which meant that Yang Kai's breakthrough had failed. How could a person from the third-order Dao Source realm fail to break through to the Emperor realm without suffering a backlash? Once he suffered a backlash from the heavenly manifestation, if he was lucky, his cultivation would be crippled, and if he was unlucky, he would die. However, Yang Kai really came back unscathed. Ling Yinqin examined Yang Kai several times before confirming that what she saw was real. Suddenly, her expression changed slightly, as if she had thought of something. Chapter 2373. This young man named Yang Kai must have severed his cultivation at a critical moment, otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to be safe and sound. Severing one's cultivation was tantamount to severing one's own path of martial Dao. Thinking of this, Ling Yinqin couldn't help but sigh. Looking at his complexion, he seemed to have suffered some serious injuries, otherwise, he wouldn't have looked so bad. This person was really unlucky. He had only been in the solitary void-sealed world for a few days before encountering such a disaster. If he had been 2 months later, he might have been able to break through to the Emperor realm in the outside world. "Brother Yang, did you fail to break through?" Jiao Yi asked bluntly with his mouth wide open. He didn't think too much about it. He only asked because he saw that Yang Kai had returned so quickly without any signs of improvement in his cultivation. But as soon as he spoke, Ling Yinqin quietly kicked him. Jiao Yi immediately knew that he had said something wrong and quickly shut his mouth. If there was no one else here, it would be understandable for him to ask out of concern for Yang Kai, but there were others here, so his question would undoubtedly let them know that Yang Kai's current state was very bad. I failed." Yang Kai replied calmly, without the slightest hint of annoyance. "Breakthrough?" The purple-robed man opposite him raised his brow when he heard this, as if he had realized something. He looked at Yang Kai and asked, "So, the commotion just now was caused by your breakthrough? Who are you?" Yang Kai glanced at him indifferently. Ling Yinqin hurriedly sent a message, "He's the Vice Pavilion Master of Profound Cloud Pavilion, Yang Yarosha. Profound Cloud Pavilion's influence on Clear Sky Island is not small, and the Pavilion Master's cultivation is in the Emperor realm. Don't speak. I'll take care of this matter." From her tone, it seemed that she was very afraid of this Profound Cloud Pavilion. Yang Kai had chatted with Jiao Yi a lot before and knew that there were many forces on Clear Sky Island. If one wanted to survive in this damned place, the cultivator had to stick together, so after a long time, various forces of various sizes would naturally emerge. Ling Yinqin and the others were actually part of this group, but they weren't famous. In the entire Clear Sky Island, there were as many as 3 to 5 in the Emperor realm. These were the strongest forces under the control of the Emperor realm, and no one dared to casually provoke them. The Profound Cloud Pavilion was one of them. Yang Kai also did not expect that above this vast sea, he would actually still be able to run into the profound Cloud Pavilion's ship. Ling Yinqin had sent him a message, undoubtedly because she was afraid that Yang Kai was a newcomer. It was out of goodwill that he had offended the other party. At the same time, a man beside Yang Yaroshui suddenly leaned over and whispered something to Yang Yaroshui. Yang Yaroshui's eyes suddenly brightened. He looked at Yang Kai with a meaningful expression, and said with a smile, "Kid. You're just like that woman. Are they all new here? Why does he look so unfamiliar?" When Ling Yinqin heard this, her heart couldn't help sinking. The dozen or so crew members on this ship were all fixed, so the man beside Yang Yaroshui obviously recognized them, so when he saw Yang Kai's unfamiliar face, he realized that these two should be newcomers. A new cultivator would generally carry a certain amount of source crystals, so this was tantamount to 2 fat sheep for a cultivator in the solitary void-sealed world. Even someone like Jiao Yi had been tempted, let alone someone from profound Cloud Pavilion. Ling Yinqin quickly said, "Brother Yang, these two are my crew members, they're not newcomers." "Brother Yang, you must be mistaken, right?" Yang Yaroshui's face sank and he snorted, "Cheap servant, is Brother Yang someone you can call me?" Although his cultivation was only in the third-order Dao Source realm, not much different from Ling Yinqin, he was the Vice Pavilion Master of Profound Cloud Pavilion and had a master from the Emperor realm behind him. His status was not something a wild fox Zen like Ling Yinqin could compare to. Hearing Ling Yinqin call him that, Yang Yaroshui immediately became annoyed. Ling Yinqin's face turned ugly, but the situation was beyond her, so she had no choice but to lower her head and apologize. "Vice Pavilion Master Yang, this mistress misspoke. Please don't take offense." She had lived in the solitary void-sealed world for several decades and knew what kind of people she couldn't provoke, so even if she was angry, she could only swallow her anger and ask for a moment of peace. Jiao Yi and the other crew members secretly clenched their fists and gritted their teeth. Yang Yaroshui glanced sideways at Ling Yinqin and said, "This is the only time. If you do it again, I won't let you off." "Many thanks, Vice Pavilion Master Yang," Ling Yinqin said through gritted teeth. "As for these two," Yang Yaroshui pointed at Liu Xianyun and Yang Kai and said with a smile, "Do you think this king can't tell if they're newcomers or not? People who live in this damned place all year round will more or less have some sea chi on them, but they don't, so it's obvious that they've only been here for a short time. Ling Yinqin, how dare you deceive this king?" Ling Yinqin's pretty face changed slightly, knowing that she couldn't deny it now. She glanced at Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun worriedly, thinking about how to get them out of this situation, but she also knew that there wasn't much hope, so her heart was filled with guilt. She originally thought that Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun would be panicking and fearful after being targeted by Yang Yaroshui, but when she looked around, the two of them were standing together with indifferent expressions and were whispering something to each other. It seemed like Yang Kai was asking Liu Xianyun who had left the mark on her face, but Liu Xianyun kept shaking her head and refused to say anything, making Yang Kai feel extremely helpless. "Hand over these two people and give me half of your harvest from this trip, and this king will make an exception and let you go." Yang Yaroshui pointed at Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun and said arrogantly, "Half of our harvest?" Jiao Yi had a fiery temper, so when he heard this, he immediately exploded and stomped his foot. "Why don't you just rob us?" Yang Yaroshui's face sank and he glanced at Jiao Yi and snorted, "Ling Yinqin, are these people taught by you? Do you know the consequences of offending this king?" Ling Yinqin immediately glared at Jiao Yi and shouted, "Don't cause trouble." Since his big sister had spoken, even if Jiao Yi was dissatisfied, he didn't dare to say anything more, but his expression was extremely ugly. His suppressed anger almost ignited him, and the others also had similar expressions. They had painstakingly set out to sea, risking their lives, and finally returned with a full load, but they didn't expect to be blocked by Yang Yaroshui here and be robbed of half of their harvest. Half of their harvest was not small, and it was equivalent to the result of their previous 1-2 battle. Who would be willing to hand it over? Ling Yinqin cupped her fists and said, "Vice Pavilion Master Yang, since those two are on my ship, they are my crew, so this mistress will definitely ensure their safety. How about this? Our harvest this time is not small, so I can give it all to you, but the premise is that you don't make trouble for them. Are you bargaining with me? Yang Yaro Shui narrowed his eyes, a cold light flashing in them as his whole body exuded an icy chill. Ling Yinqin raised her head and said, "We harvested 100,000 pieces of grey feather coral this time, as well as the corpse of an icefire profound armored dolphin. Vice Pavilion Master Yang can consider whether it is worth it or not." "What?" Yang Yaro Shui was shocked and cried out, 100,000 pieces of grey feather coral and the corpse of an icefire profound armored dolphin? Even if he was the Vice Pavilion Master of Profound Cloud Pavilion, he had never seen such a large amount of wealth in one go. Just the 100,000 pieces of grey feather coral alone was incredible, not to mention the corpse of a 12th order monster beast. A 12th order monster beast was equivalent to the Emperor realm, and its monster core was priceless. In the solitary void-sealed world, many spirit pills were refined from the monster cores of sea beasts, and this 12th order monster beast's monster core was enough to refine an emperor-grade spirit pill. Its usefulness to Yang Yaro Shui was simply immeasurable. He was immediately moved. However, Yang Yaro Shui still said in a deep voice, "Ling Yinqin, you dare to tease this king? The Icefire Profound Armored Dolphin was a 12th order monster beast. How could you have killed it with your strength?" Ling Yinqin said, "It's already dead, and that piece of grey feather coral was originally guarded by it. We just went there to mine and collect it." Yang Yaro Shui immediately believed her, because in this solitary void sea, there were often some cultivator who encountered opportunities and fortuitous encounters that allowed them to obtain many good things without any effort. He laughed, "You're quite lucky. Not bad, not bad. With so many things, it's enough to buy your lives." Ling Yinqin quickly said, "So, Vice Pavilion Master Yang agrees?" Yang Yaro Shui nodded, "Naturally, why wouldn't I agree to such a good thing? This king won't take them away, but in addition to the conditions you just stated, these two must also hand over their space rings." He wanted to take Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun away mainly for the source crystals in their space rings. As long as he could get the space rings, why would he care whether Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun lived or died? Ling Yinqin frowned, "This mistress is unable to decide for them." Saying so, she turned to look at Yang Kai with a helpless expression. This was the limit of what she could do, so the rest was up to Yang Kai to see if he was tactful or not. Yang Kai snorted, "Shameless to such an extent, you can be considered unconventional." Previously, when Ling Yinqin and Yang Yaro Shui were negotiating, Jiao Yi and the others did not interrupt even though they were angry. Even when Ling Yinqin said that she was willing to hand over all their gains in exchange for his and Liu Xianyun's safety, none of the crew objected. This made Yang Kai understand how high Ling Yinqin's prestige was among this group of people because he and Liu Xianyun had nothing to do with them. They had only paid for the tickets and rooms to be with them temporarily. With such a relationship, who would be willing to pay such a high price to protect them? Ling Yinqin did so because Yang Kai was on her ship, so he was one of the people on her ship. She had to protect the people on her ship. This was a woman of great principle. Her subordinates also trusted her, so no matter what decision she made, they would only obey. He naturally saw the meaning in Ling Yinqin's eyes, and although she did not say it clearly, she was undoubtedly trying to persuade him to pay up to avoid disaster. Ling Yinqin thought that Yang Kai had failed to break through and cut off his cultivation, so his momentum was weak, but how could she have known that he did not put these people in his eyes at all? So, when she heard him speak so arrogantly, Ling Yinqin's expression changed drastically and she hurriedly said, "Yang Kai, bear with it for a while and you'll find peace, but take a step back and you'll see the whirl." Yang Kai snorted, "Big sister Ling, the path of a cultivator is to forge ahead and face it head-on. Blindly retreating and enduring is not a good habit. Some people, if you take a step back, they will shit and piss on your head." Chapter 2374. Ling Yinqin was dumbfounded because many years ago, there was a man who told her the same thing. Even after so many years, that man's smile and demeanor were still engraved in her heart. At this moment, that figure gradually overlapped with the one in front of her named Yang Kai, causing her to fall into a daze. "Well said, but it's meaningless." Yang Yaro Shui sneered, "This king wants to see how you're going to advance in front of me and face me head-on, You were the one who hit my junior sister? Yang Kai looked at him coldly. That's right. Young Yarosha looked at Yang Kai contemptuously, daring to be presumptuous in front of this king. A slap is already a light punishment, if you... He was still threatening, but halfway through his sentence, Yang Kai suddenly disappeared. In the next moment, his vision blurred as Yang Kai suddenly appeared half a meter in front of him, raised his hand, and sent a slap flying towards him. Young Yarosha shuddered and instinctively leaned to the side, trying to avoid this blow. But Yang Kai's speed was simply beyond his imagination, and by the time he moved, the slap had already landed on his face. ****. Young Yarosha was sent flying, his body tumbling in mid-air as he spat out a few teeth and a mouthful of blood before landing heavily on the ground. Silence. The entire deck was dead silent. Jiao Yi and the others were all dumbfounded as they watched this unbelievable scene, the soles of their feet almost cramping. Ling Yinqin was also shocked, her heart palpitating. Although she hadn't had much contact with Yang Kai, from her impression, Yang Kai wasn't a hot-tempered person. On the contrary, he was quite polite. But what she didn't expect was that Yang Kai would directly attack young Yarosha, and this move was a slap to his face. What should she do now? She had hoped that she could spend money to avoid this disaster, but now it seemed that this was just wishful thinking on her part. That's not right. Yang Kai failed to break through and severed his own cultivation. His aura should be very weak and his strength should have dropped significantly. Young Yaroshuei was a cultivator of the third order Dao Source realm. Even if he was ambushed, how could he not dodge his attack? But when Yang Kai attacked just now, there was no sign of his aura weakening or his strength dropping. The source energy fluctuations from that palm were clearly the power of the third order Dao Source realm. What was wrong with him? Ling Yinqin was a little confused. The group of people from Profound Cloud Pavilion was also stunned. In this solitary void sea, and even on Clear Sky Island, they had always been the ones to show off and act arrogantly. Who would have thought that one day they would be slapped in the face? Furthermore, the person who was beaten up was actually their own vice pavilion master. These people's minds buzzed for a moment, and they almost went silly. You actually dare to hit me? Young Yarosha crawled up from the ground, his entire face completely distorted. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, he glared fiercely at Yang Kai and shouted, "Do you know who this king is? How dare you hit me?" Yang Kai snorted, "You dare to be presumptuous in front of this young master? A slap is already a light punishment. If you dare to keep talking, I'll take your dog life." Young Yarosha was stunned. Then, he laughed in anger. He shouted hysterically, "Kill them! Kill them! I want all the men on this ship to die. I want all the women on this ship to suffer a fate worse than death." He was really provoked by Yang Kai and went completely berserk, his face full of resentment. Ling Yinqin's face changed drastically when she heard this and hurriedly shouted, "Vice Pavilion Master Yang, please show mercy." There were only a dozen or so crew members on her ship, and only half of them were Dao Source Realm cultivators. The remaining half were Origin Kings, but there were at least 30 people from Profound Cloud Pavilion. There were more than 20 Dao Source Realm cultivators. No matter how one looked at it, such a huge force was not something they could win against. If they really fought, they would definitely die without a grave. As the big sister, she naturally had to think for the crew. Young Yarosha said fiercely, "It's too late to say anything now. Ling Yinqin, this king will personally deal with you, strip you naked, and hang you on Clear Sky City's gate." His anger towards Yang Kai made him hate Ling Yinqin as well. As a female cultivator, being stripped naked and hung on the city gates for everyone to watch was definitely a great insult. Ling Yinqin's heart sank to the bottom when she heard this. Dong dong dong. Many of the cultivators from Profound Cloud Pavilion had already rushed over, each with a ferocious look on their faces. Obviously, they had no intention of letting Ling Yinqin and the others live. Seeing this, Ling Yinqin also knew that there was no turning back, so she gritted her teeth and shouted, "Fight!" Jiao Yi and the others' faces turned cold as they pushed their source chi and summoned their artifacts. Yang Kai's figure flickered as he suddenly returned to Jiao Yi and the others, facing the incoming storm head-on. "Brother, be careful. Liu Xianyun also took out her artifact and called out in a low voice. "Take care of yourself." As Kai Yang spoke, he flicked his wrist and a large long sword appeared in his hand, which he gripped tightly. "Chop off his limbs and cripple his cultivation. I want him to know the consequences of offending this king." Yang Yaroshui's eyes were bloodshot as he glared at Yang Kai and shouted at his subordinates. He was truly furious. No one had ever dared to disobey his orders, let alone slap his face in front of so many people. Yang Kai was the first to do so his hatred for Yang Kai was so deep that even the water of the solitary void sea couldn't wash it away. If he didn't torture him, how could he dispel this resentment in his heart? Yang Kai was indifferent. Facing the dozens of cultivators pouncing on him like wolves and tigers, he simply swung his sword slightly. In an instant, sword light flashed and sword chi filled the sky. Million sword chi, chasing moon swallows the wolf. Myriads sword swept out, and sword chi shot forward like a waterfall, breaking through the sky with an imposing momentum. Hong hong hong. Before the profound cloud pavilion cultivator at the front could figure out what was going on, he was shocked to find that his defensive artifacts and protective source chi had been easily destroyed. Then, he felt a sharp pain in his body and lost consciousness. Hualala. On the deck, the smell of blood filled the air. The 7 or 8 cultivators at the front fell like cut straws, blood and internal organs flowing all over the floor. The cultivators at the back also suffered heavy injuries and fell to the ground, howling miserably. When the other profound cloud pavilion cultivators saw this turn of events, all of them stopped in their tracks in shock and stared at Yang Kai with wide eyes, their eyes overflowing with fear. Emperor Aura. Emperor Artifact. Yang Yaroshu, who was covering half of his face with his hand and waiting for a good show to begin, suddenly cried out in alarm. His eyes were like locusts biting onto Yang Kai's myriad sword, an extremely greedy look flashing across his face. As soon as Yang Kai attacked, he felt the aura of Myriad's sword. This was an Emperor artifact, a genuine Emperor artifact. If he could obtain it, he might be able to use the power of an Emperor artifact to comprehend the mysteries of the Emperor realm. Where did this little brat come from? How does he have an Emperor artifact? Ling Yinqin and the others were also dumbfounded. They originally thought that they would not be able to escape this time and were prepared to drag a few people down with them before they died. They were mentally prepared to fight to the death, but before the enemy could reach them, more than a dozen of them had already fallen. And all this was caused by a single attack from Yang Kai. What's going on? Ling Yinqin was also confused by the sea breeze. Her beautiful eyes stared blankly at Yang Kai's back, thinking, didn't he fail to break through and sever his own cultivation? How can he still display such powerful strength? Was that attack just now the power of an Emperor artifact? Yes, it was definitely the power of an Emperor artifact. Otherwise, with Yang Kai's current situation, it would be impossible for him to achieve such a feat. She had long heard that Emperor artifacts were extremely powerful, and now it seems that it was true. However, Yang Kai must have put a lot of burden on his body to use an Emperor artifact, so it was very likely that he would not be able to make a second attack. What are you waiting for? He just failed to break through and doesn't have much strength left. After one attack, he'll be an arrow at the end of its flight. What are you waiting for? Yang Yaroshu was obviously thinking the same thing as Ling Yinqin. Seeing that his cultivator subordinates were scared out of their wits, he immediately shouted in disappointment, urging them to hurry up and make a move. Hearing him say this, the profound cloud pavilion cultivator who had stopped in their tracks seemed to wake up from a dream. Their previous timidity and fear were swept away and replaced with ruthless looks. Yang Kai grinned sinisterly and flicked his hands, sending out 2 huge moon blades. Like 2 pitch-black wheels, they directly crashed into the crowd on the other side. In the next moment, screams and cries of alarm resounded through the sky. Wherever the moon blades passed, they destroyed everything in their path. No cultivator could resist them at all. With the slightest touch, they were cut in half and died on the spot. There was a path to heaven, but you refused to take it. There was no door to hell, but you chose to throw yourself into it. Today, no one can leave. Yang Kai coldly snorted and flicked his hands, sending out 1 moon blade after another. On the deck, the profound cloud pavilion cultivator instantly cried for their parents. A group of trash with only first-order Dao Source Realm and Origin King Realm cultivation. With Yang Kai's current means, he really didn't need to put them in his eyes. In just 3 breaths of time, only 5 or 6 cultivators from Profound Cloud Pavilion were left alive. The rest were all lying on the deck, lifeless. Run! No one knew who shouted, but that person leaped up and flew towards the sea. They were completely frightened by Yang Kai's bloody methods, so how could they dare to continue fighting here? When the others saw this, they naturally lost the will to continue fighting and fled one after another. Ling Yinqin's face changed and she shouted in a low voice, "Group 221, chase after them. Don't let them escape." This battle happened too quickly, so fast that she didn't even have time to react before it was over. But seeing the remaining people flee, how could she just sit back and watch? Once these people escaped and news of this reached Clear Sky Island, the Pavilion Master of Profound Cloud Pavilion would definitely not let this matter rest. He was a master from the Emperor realm. Once he wanted to find trouble with them, no one could stop him. Jiao Yi and the others received the order and naturally hurriedly chased after them. On the deck, the sea breeze whistled and the stench of blood filled the air. It was nauseating and the scene on the deck was like a ghost town. It was a ghastly sight. Yang Yarosha's entire body was trembling and his face was deathly pale as he stared at Yang Kai in horror. In his heart, he couldn't understand how this little brat could still have such powerful combat strength after failing to break through. More than 30 of his subordinates couldn't even last 10 breaths of time in front of him before almost all of them died. In the blink of an eye, he was the only one left. Chapter 2375. Looking at the cold and resolute face of Yang Kai, Yang Yarosha felt a chill run down his spine, vaguely feeling that he had provoked an extremely powerful person and was filled with regret. Even if he managed to escape this time, he wouldn't be able to explain this huge loss to the Pavilion Master and would have to bear the Pavilion Master's wrath. "Do you think I should stab you to death or stab you to death?" A wicked smile bloomed on Yang Kai's face. Yang Yarosha trembled all over as he said in horror, "You can't kill me. I'm the Vice Pavilion Master of Profound Cloud Pavilion. I'm Lord Mi Tianxing's subordinate. If you kill me, he absolutely won't let you off." "Mi Tianxing?" Yang Kai said coldly, "That First Order Emperor Realm guy?" "Yes, Pavilion Master is very good to me," Yang Yarosha quickly said, thinking that Yang Kai knew Mi Tianxing's name. Unexpectedly, Yang Kai showed a disdainful expression and curled his lips. "A First Order Emperor Realm Master is nothing. It's not like this young master hasn't killed one before." When Yang Yarosha heard this, his first reaction was that this guy was bragging. How could a First Order Emperor Realm Master be so easy to kill? Moreover, these words came from the mouth of a Third Order Dao Source Realm cultivator. No matter how one looked at it, it sounded ridiculous. But he didn't dare to refute and could only say, "Let me go and I can give you a lot of benefits. If you kill me, you won't be able to move an inch on Clear Sky Island." Yang Kai's expression turned cold. "You still dare to threaten me when you're about to die? I'm just telling the truth. What's more, it won't be easy for you to kill me with your current ability. Why fight until both sides are injured? Wouldn't it be better for us to sit down and talk?" Yang Kai sneered, "Talk should be based on the basis that both sides are equal. I can take your life with a snap of my fingers. What qualifications do you have to talk to me? Don't underestimate this king. Even a rotten ship has 3 pounds of nails. You think too highly of yourself." Yang Kai snorted, and the myriad sword in his hand slashed down at him. Yang Yarosha went pale with fright. He'd never imagined that even after he'd tried so hard to persuade them, the other party would still attack him. For a moment, he was both angry and anxious in his heart, and he didn't hesitate any longer to directly withdraw a secret treasure to block in front of him. Whoosh, a crisp sound rang out. Yang Yarosha was horrified to find that his artifact had actually shattered into pieces, unable to provide any form of protection at all. It disintegrated the moment his opponent's sword slashed down. The power of the Emperor artifact directly cut into his body and split him in half. Was he even human? Even until his death, young Yarosha could not believe that he, a third-order Tao source realm, had been destroyed so easily. If he had known that the difference in strength between them was so great, how could he have continued to stay here? Perhaps he would have tried to escape. At the very least, there was still hope for survival. The deck soon became empty. Other than the corpses all over the ground, only young Kai was left. Even Liu Xianyun had followed Jiao Yi and the others to chase after the enemy. Yang Kai reached out and sucked the dead cultivator's space rings over. After inspecting them a little, he threw them on the ground in disgust. These cultivator should have lived in the solitary void-sealed world for a long time. There were a lot of things in their rings. But there was not a single one of them that had any real value. With Yang Kai's current wealth, he really didn't care about them. Young Yarosha's artifact was originally quite good, but after it was split apart by the myriad sword, it had lost its value. Yang Kai no longer paid attention to these people's space rings, and instead cast his gaze on the huge ship. This ship was driven by young Yarosha and the others. In the solitary void-sealed world, this kind of large artifact used to go out to sea seemed to be very common. Yang Kai thought that he might need to go out to sea in the future, so he leapt up and flew to the opposite ship. He walked into the cabin, found the control center, and began refining it. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Ling Yin-chin and the others returned from different directions. None of the dozen or so crew members were missing, and except for a few who were injured, everyone else was basically unharmed. Once everyone gathered and reported the situation to each other, Ling Yin-chin couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. None of the profound cloud pavilion cultivator escaped. They were all hunted down and killed, so there was no need to worry about news of this place spreading to Clear Sky Island. Danger had happened on the solitary void sea, so it was normal for young Yarosha and the others to go missing. Profound Cloud Pavilion might not suspect Ling Yin-chin and the others, and even if they did, there would be no proof, so she didn't have to worry about anything. After calming down, Ling Yin-chin felt like she had just walked through the gates of hell. She ordered the crew to clean up the deck and push the corpses into the sea. Releasing her divine sense, she found that young Kai was refining the Profound Cloud Pavilion's ship, but she didn't disturb him. Instead, she pulled Liu Xianyun aside and asked in a low voice, "What happened to that brother of yours?" If not for young Kai, they probably wouldn't have encountered such a thing, but at the same time, if not for young Kai, they definitely wouldn't have been able to harvest anything, and all their gains would have been stolen by young Yarosha. Therefore, Ling Yin-chin was very grateful to young Kai, but what puzzled her was how young Kai could display such terrifying combat strength. More than 30 people on the Profound Cloud Pavilion's ship were almost wiped out by him alone. Only an Emperor Realm Master can do such an incredible thing, right? If such a powerful force was unfavorable to them, who on this ship could resist? Ling Yin-chin felt even more fortunate that she had stopped the greedy actions of Jiao Yi and the others that day, otherwise, she and the others wouldn't even know how they died. Although she didn't understand what she was asking, Liu Xianyun knew what she meant. After pondering for a moment, she said, "Brother is not an ordinary person. A few days ago, we were chased by a third-order Emperor Realm Master, but we still managed to escape. It was all thanks to Brother's efforts." "You survived being chased by a third-order Emperor Realm Master?" Ling Yin-chin was shocked. She had never experienced how strong a third-order Emperor Realm Master was, but she knew that it was absolutely impossible for a third-order Tao Source Realm Master to survive being chased. However, young Kai did it, which meant that he wasn't an ordinary third-order Tao Source Realm Master. Brother is very powerful. He even injured that third-order Emperor Realm Master. Liu Xianyun didn't seem to notice Ling Yin-chin's shock and added, "Injured?" Ling Yin-chin was completely confused. She felt like her brain wasn't enough to process all of this. Everything she heard was completely beyond her comprehension. It was a sneak attack, and that third-order Emperor Realm Master seemed to have been injured before. Despite Liu Xianyun's explanation, Ling Yin-chin's mind was still buzzing. She didn't listen at all and just stared in the direction of the ship in a daze for a long time. "Big sister, they have a lot of good things. That young Yarosha actually has more than 200,000 source crystals on him. We've struck it rich this time. Jiao Yi walked over with a happy face and handed the space ring in his hand to Ling Yinqin. Only then did Ling Yinqin come back to her senses and say, "Divide the things among yourselves, but throw away all the artifacts and unique things. You're not allowed to bring them back to Clear Sky Island. If they brought back artifacts and unique things, they might be exposed and the people of Profound Cloud Pavilion would be able to track them down, so Ling Yinqin wouldn't allow such a thing to happen." Although Jiao Yi felt that it was a pity, he also knew that Big Sister was right. He immediately nodded and left, preparing to share the spoils with his brothers. The deck had been cleaned up, and all the corpses had been thrown into the sea. The blood had also been washed away. However, Yang Kai hadn't come out yet, so Ling Yinqin could only continue to wait. About a day later, the ship on the other side suddenly buzzed and the entire hull began to tremble. In the next moment, accompanied by a flash of light, the huge ship suddenly disappeared, replaced by Yang Kai, who appeared in everyone's field of vision. At this moment, he seemed to have consumed a lot of his strength and his face was a little pale. However, he was holding an exquisite ship that had been shrunk countless times in the palm of his hand. It was obviously the one from Profound Cloud Pavilion. So fast. Even though Ling Yinqin already had some understanding of Yang Kai's strength, she still couldn't help but be surprised. It only took Yang Kai a day to refine the ship's barrier. If someone else told her this, she wouldn't believe it at all, but the truth was right in front of her. How strong is this person? Ling Yinqin had already overestimated Yang Kai as much as possible, but she found that she still underestimated him. Even if someone from the Emperor realm came here, it was impossible for him to refine the ship in just a day, right? She thought that she and the others would have to wait here for a month or two. While she was in a daze, Yang Kai had already put the ship into his space ring and his figure flickered, arriving on the deck. The dozen or so crew members looked at him in awe. Jiao Yi opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but no words came out. With the strength Yang Kai showed yesterday, Jiao Yi no longer had the confidence to call Yang Kai a brother. "I'm sorry for causing trouble for everyone," Yang Kai said apologetically. He knew that the reason why the people from Profound Cloud Pavilion came here and found Ling Yinqin and the others was most likely because of the commotion caused by Zhong Ruoshi's breakthrough. Otherwise, how could they coincidentally run into each other in this vast sea? So, the cause of this matter was still him. Hearing what he said, the crew waved their hands and shook their heads. What a joke! The people from Profound Cloud Pavilion were slaughtered by Yang Kai in the blink of an eye, which showed how terrifying Yang Kai's strength was. They naturally didn't dare to take his polite words seriously. Observing their expressions, Yang Kai knew that these people were very afraid of him. "Brother Yang, we should be the ones thanking you. You saved us from a disaster," Ling Yinqin said. Yang Kai had a very good impression of this woman. Previously, she was willing to hand over all her gains on this trip in exchange for his and Liu Xianyun's safety. Yang Kai saw it all, but it was a pity that Yang Yarosha was too greedy and didn't know what to do. He just had to throw his life away. "Big Sister Ling is too serious. It's still my fault," Yang Kai said embarrassedly. He didn't know how to explain what happened before to Ling Yinqin, and it wasn't easy to explain, so he could only vaguely say it. "How are you doing now?" Ling Yinqin asked with a frown. Yang Kai had failed to break through earlier, severed his cultivation, fought a big battle, and even spent his energy refining the ship. In her opinion, he was simply courting death. "You should rest." Chapter 2376. Big Sister Ling, I have to apologize to you. Yang Kai scratched his head and awkwardly took out the high-grade spirit purifying array's array base. "I broke this thing." Ling Yinqin took a look and found that her spirit purifying array was seriously damaged and could no longer be used. Her beautiful eyes couldn't help but flash with a hint of sadness, reminiscence, and regret. "If it's broken, then it's broken." Ling Yinqin forced a smile and comforted, "It's just a high-grade spirit purifying array, don't worry about it." Yang Kai asked, "How many source crystals is this thing worth?" "I'll give it to you." Ling Yinqin waved her hand, "No need. It's a pity that it wasn't able to help you." Saying so, she took out 2 wooden tokens and handed them to Yang Kai. "What are these?" Yang Kai asked doubtfully. These are Clear Sky Island's identity tokens. You'll need them to enter Clear Sky City. Yang Kai reached out and took them. He immediately reacted and raised his eyebrows. Did you take these from those people from Profound Cloud Pavilion? Will there be any problems with using these to enter the city? There won't be any problems. These two are just low-grade identity tokens and don't have any information recorded on them. If it's a high-grade identity token, it'll be different. Others won't be able to impersonate them, Ling Yinqin explained. Thank you very much. Yang Kai was overjoyed. He was originally worried about how he and Liu Xianyun would be able to sneak into Clear Sky City safely, but he didn't expect these people from Profound Cloud Pavilion to take the initiative to give them identity tokens. This was truly timely help. I'm a little tired, so I'll go back and rest first. Brother Yang, help yourselves, Ling Yinqin said. Then, she turned and walked into the cabin. Liu Xianyun came over. She whispered to Yang Kai, brother, that high-grade spirit purifying array was left behind by Big Sister Ling's partner. It's very important to her. She had heard this information from Jiao Yi, but when she saw the change in Ling Yinqin's expression just now, she knew that Jiao Yi was telling the truth. This high-grade spirit purifying array was indeed very important to Ling Yinqin, as it contained her longing for someone. Only then did Yang Kai realize how much he had damaged. He hurriedly said in a loud voice, Miss Ling, I will definitely find someone to repair your spirit purifying array. The spirit purifying array was only damaged and not destroyed. Yang Kai originally wanted to compensate Ling Yinqin with some source crystals, or by a set of similar spirit purifying arrays when they reached Clear Sky Island, but now that he knew the significance of this spirit purifying array to Ling Yinqin, it didn't seem appropriate to compensate her or buy a set of similar spirit purifying arrays. The best way was to find someone to repair the array flag and array base. When Ling Yinqin heard this, her footsteps paused slightly. However, he didn't turn around. He just waved his hand lightly. His back seemed extremely bleak as he walked further and further away. Brother Yang, do you too want to take a rest as well? Jiao Yi walked over with a flattering smile, his attitude no longer as casual as before. Instead, he was a little more careful. We're about to set sail. It'll take us less than a month to reach Heavenspan Island. Old Jiao will call you when we arrive. Okay, then I'll have to trouble Brother Jiao. Yang Kai nodded and walked towards the room with Liu Xianyun. After a while, the ship set sail again. Inside the room, Liu Xianyun wanted to ask about Yang Kai's current situation several times, but she swallowed the words back down every time. Yang Kai's failure to break through to the Emperor realm should have been a big blow to him, so Liu Xianyun felt that if she asked again, he would definitely be saddened even more. She didn't know how to comfort Yang Kai and sighed in her heart. She felt that the heavens were really unfair to allow Yang Kai to find an opportunity to break through in this damned place. The speed of the ship wasn't slow. Occasionally, they would encounter attacks from sea beasts, but the cultivator on board was able to deal with them properly. It could be seen that Ling Yinqin's subordinates, no matter how high their cultivation was, were all extremely experienced cultivators and had great experience in dealing with sea beasts. The entire journey was more daunting than dangerous. About 20 days later, Yang Kai suddenly heard a commotion on the deck. He listened carefully and learned from the joyous conversations of the crew that they were about to reach Clear Sky Island. Because the cultivator on Clear Sky Island had to search for cultivation resources at sea, every trip out to sea was accompanied by great risks. Often, 10 to 20 people would go out, but less than half would return. But this time, Ling Yinqin's ship was very different. No matter how many people went out, they would all return. Not only that, but they also had a great harvest, so the crew was naturally overjoyed. Sure enough, it wasn't long before the ship slowed down and soon came to a complete stop. Hearing a burst of noise, Yang Kai released his divine sense and found that the ship had arrived at the edge of a huge island and was docked at a place similar to a pier. Before Ling Yinqin and the others arrived, there were already several ships waiting to dock, and from time to time, a cultivator would fly out of those ships and land on the ground. As soon as these cultivators landed, many people would gather around them, as if every cultivator that returned from the sea was in high demand. Yang Kai saw a cultivator that returned from the sea exchange a few words with another person before quickly leaving with that person. Brother Yang, we've arrived at Clear Sky Island. Ling Yinchen's voice came from outside the door. Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun looked at each other and quickly stood up. When they arrived on the deck, Zhao Yi and the others were already waiting impatiently. When they saw Yang Kai, they all nodded at him in awe. These people are selling their harvest from the sea. Yang Kai walked to Zhao Yi's side and pointed at the cultivator that was talking. Zhao Yi nodded and said, yes. Basically, there will be some harvest from a trip to the sea. There are people waiting at the docks, and when they see those that return from the sea, they will take the initiative to buy it. If the price is agreed upon, it's very cost-effective to sell it, saving us the trouble of going to the city to find a buyer. Many shops in the city have people waiting here, and every time someone returns, they will surround them like madmen. The competition is fierce. After listening to Zhao Yi's explanation, Yang Kai knew that his guess was right. He had thought so when he saw this scene before. Let's go. Zhao Yi called out, and the crew used their movement skills to fly to the shore. Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun followed closely behind, but Ling Yinchen stayed behind. She formed a seal with her hands and prepared to put away the ship. As soon as the crew came ashore, many merchants immediately came up to them and surrounded them, offering good prices to buy their harvest from this trip. Zhao Yi and the others were undoubtedly very familiar with this, so they all pretended to be profound and put on airs as they whispered to the merchants. It didn't take long for someone to agree on a price and go to the side to prepare for the transaction. Zhao Yi and the others had gained a lot from this trip to the sea. Not to mention the more than 100,000 grey feather corals and the corpse of a 12th order monster beast, the spoils that Yang Kai collected after killing the people from Profound Cloud Pavilion were many times more than what they usually got. The harvest was too big to be sold all at once, so the dozen or so crew members split up and prepared to convert a part of the harvest into useful cultivation materials for themselves, such as source crystals and spirit pills. They would find an opportunity to sell the rest later. Otherwise, if they took out so many good things at once, they would definitely be inviting trouble. Source crystals were hard currency, whether it was in the outside world or in the solitary void-sealed world. There was another kind of thing popular here, and that was spirit pills. Any spirit pill that was slightly useful could be converted into source crystals and used as a bargaining chip. While Yang Kai was looking around curiously, a middle-aged beauty suddenly appeared in front of him. This middle-aged beauty wore a long green dress, and her figure was enchanting and voluptuous. Her breasts were bulging, and her clothes were almost torn apart. She was extremely eye-catching, and her cultivation was not low, at least in the second-order Dao Source realm. However, although she looked enchanting, her demeanor was extremely dignified and beautiful. It was unknown whether she had been too slow just now or disdained to compete with others, but she hadn't been able to connect with the crew members who had just returned from the sea. Seeing Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun standing there with no one paying any attention, she took the initiative to approach them. Pursing her lips, she cupped her fists and said, "Little brother, this way please." "Madam, do you need something?" Yang Kai looked her up and down. The beautiful woman smiled and said, "This mistress is Deacon Fan Xin of Iceheart Pavilion." Iceheart Pavilion? Yang Kai raised his brow and couldn't help but take a closer look at this beautiful woman named Fan Xin. Fan Xin asked suspiciously, "What's wrong? Little brother doesn't know about Iceheart Pavilion?" She found it very strange. Although Iceheart Pavilion wasn't big on Clear Sky Island, it was definitely famous. As long as one lived on Clear Sky Island, it was impossible not to know about Iceheart Pavilion. However, Yang Kai's reaction just now seemed to be very surprised, as if this was the first time he had heard of Iceheart Pavilion. Yang Kai said calmly, "Of course I have heard of Iceheart Pavilion, but I didn't expect that Iceheart Pavilion would buy things here." Of course, this was nonsense. It was indeed the first time he had heard of Iceheart Pavilion, but Yang Kai also knew that his performance just now had aroused the beautiful woman's suspicion, so his words would undoubtedly dispel her doubts. Sure enough, the beautiful woman smiled bitterly and said, "Business is not easy, and there is competition everywhere. This mistress was forced to do this." She changed the topic and went straight to the point, I wonder if little brother has any harvest from this trip to sea? If so, can you take it out and let me have a look? This mistress will definitely give you a satisfactory price. Their goods are with me. If there's anything you need to discuss, come find me. Ling Yin-chin walked over step by step from a distance and finally helped young Kai out of his predicament. He didn't have any goods on hand. If he had known that the situation at the docks was like this, he would have definitely left something in his space ring after killing those people from Profound Cloud Pavilion. Fan Xin heard this and looked at young Kai in confusion, not knowing why he put the goods in Ling Yin-chin's hands. After all, the dozen or so people who came off the ship just now all brought something with them. Yang Kai spread his hands and smiled. I tend to get carried away when I see a beautiful woman. Big sister was afraid that I would suffer a loss, so she gave me full authority. Now it seems that it was a wise decision. Fan Xin covered her mouth and laughed. Little brother is really interesting. Chapter 2377. Fan Xin of Ice Heart Pavilion soon got together with Ling Yin-chin and secretly communicated with each other through divine sense. After a while, Ling Yin-chin looked up at young Kai and said, "Junior sister Fan's price is very reasonable, so I'm going to sell it. What do you think?" She was obviously just putting on a show for Fan Xin to see. Moreover, her cultivation was a minor realm higher than Fan Xin's, so it didn't matter if she called her junior sister. Fan Xin immediately looked at young Kai expectantly. She had been here for most of the day but hadn't gained anything. Now, she finally saw a glimmer of hope. As long as young Kai nodded, she would receive a lot of things, so she was naturally looking forward to it. Young Kai smiled and said, "Then let's sell it." Fan Xin immediately smiled, "Many thanks to senior sister and little brother. Don't worry, our Ice Heart Pavilion has always been fair and honest when it comes to business. We definitely won't lower the price." Ling Yin-chin said lightly, "I've heard of Ice Heart Pavilion's name a long time ago, otherwise, I wouldn't have sold it to you." As they spoke, the two quickly exchanged the goods. Yang Kai quietly took a look and found that in addition to some source crystals, Fan Xin also gave Ling Yin-chin some spirit pills. After receiving the goods, Fan Xin was very happy and her attitude became more enthusiastic. "Little brother, if you have anything else to sell in the future, don't forget this mistress. The price is negotiable." Yang Kai nodded, "No problem. Let's go." Ling Yin-chin called out and led Yang Kai and Liu Xianyun forward. After walking out of the noisy dock, the three of them stopped. They stood in place and waited for the others to arrive. About an incense stick worth of time later, the dozen or so crew members had all returned, and all of them were beaming with joy. Obviously, their harvest was not small. What they had just sold was only a small part of the harvest from this trip. There was still a lot more that they hadn't taken out yet. The 100,000 pieces of grey feather coral were too large and would have to be sold in batches, so it was obviously not suitable for them to be traded at the dock. Ling Yin-chin planned to wait until they returned to Clear Sky City before making a decision. Just the harvest from this trip alone was enough for them to not have to worry about food and water for the next 3 years, and they could even move to a better place to live. After walking for a short while, a huge city appeared in front of them. The city gate was also huge, like the open mouth of a beast, waiting to devour its prey. The top of the city gate was engraved with 3 large words, "Heaven Connect City." At the city gate, with the cultivator's protection, passers-by had to pay a low-grade origin crystal or something of equivalent value before they could enter. Seeing this, Kai Yang frowned. Source crystals were extremely precious in this solitary void-sealed world. He thought that as long as he had an identity token, he would be able to enter and exit this place at will, but he didn't expect that he still had to pay source crystals. This low-rank source crystal was nothing to him. However, for those poor cultivator who had lived here for a long time, it was tantamount to a considerable fortune. There weren't many people in front of the city gate. Other than the cultivator who had just returned from the dock and was lining up to enter the city, no one had left the city. It was obvious that the cultivator in Clear Sky City was unwilling to spend a single source crystal to enter and exit the city at will. They would only do so when they needed to go out to sea or when they had to leave the city. Ling Yinqin's group of a dozen or so people easily entered the city after paying a dozen or so source crystals and verifying everyone's identity tokens. Yang Kai was originally a little worried that his identity as a newcomer would be exposed. But seeing how simple things were, he knew that he was overthinking things. After entering the city, it was a lively scene. There were many cultivator shops in the city, and there were many shops on both sides of the street. There was an endless stream of cultivator shops. However, he soon noticed something different. Many cultivator were sitting cross-legged on both sides of the street, staring blankly ahead with blank expressions. There were many of these cultivator, and regardless of their cultivation, their auras were extremely weak, as if they hadn't cultivated for a long time. They just sat there, motionless. Not only that, there were also many people dressed as beggars on the street, constantly begging and bowing, but with little to show for it. Yang Kai frowned. He didn't expect that the seemingly bustling clear sky city would be so bleak on the inside. These are all pitiful people. Ling Yinqin sighed. Without cultivation resources, their cultivation is declining day by day, and they don't have the ability to go out to sea to find things. Other than begging, they can only wait for death. Hearing her say this, Yang Kai understood why the streets were like this. Just entering the city and seeing this, who knew how many people were waiting for death in Clear Sky City? Is there really no way to leave this place? Yang Kai asked. Ling Yinqin shook her head. I've never heard of anyone successfully leaving this place. While the two were talking, an angry shout suddenly came from not far away. Little thief, how dare you steal from me? The shout was followed by a commotion in the crowd not far away, with occasional sounds of fighting. Yang Kai released his divine sense and immediately found out what was happening. It seemed that a cultivator had been robbed, and the cultivator who was robbed had a first-order Dao Source Realm cultivation, while the person who robbed him was only a second-order Origin King. Not only was his cultivation much weaker than the other party, but his aura was so weak that he might not even be able to display the power of a first-order Origin King. This kind of suicidal behavior was absolutely impossible outside, but it seemed to be normal in Clear Sky City. With 2 bangs, the robber was killed on the spot and his space ring was taken back. The cultivator from the first-order Dao Source Realm was about to say something, but suddenly, countless people with blank expressions swarmed over from both sides of the street. These people's originally empty eyes were now red as they stared at the cultivator's space ring and fought over it. Even if the owner of the space ring was from the first-order Dao Source Realm, 2 fists couldn't fight against 4 hands. Although he killed several people, no one retreated and was soon overwhelmed by the crowd. Shua Shua. Just as these people were fighting fiercely, 2 figures suddenly descended from the sky. These 2 people were full of imposing auras. They were dressed in black robes, and their faces were full of ridicule as they watched the fight in front of them. However, they had no intention of stopping it. They are from Clear Sky City's law enforcement team, Jiao Yi explained softly to Yang Kai. They don't care? Yang Kai asked in surprise. Since they were from the law enforcement team, they naturally had to maintain the peace of the city, so why were they doing nothing when a fight was happening right in front of them? Jiao Yi sneered, you'll know when you see. Peng peng. 2 more robbers were sent flying by the owner of the ring, but this person seemed to be a little exhausted. Although his situation was better than those who were waiting for death or begging, his cultivation had dropped drastically after coming to Clear Sky Island. He couldn't exert the strength of a Dao Source Realm cultivator at all. At this moment, he was covered in wounds and exhausted. When he raised his head, he happened to see the 2 law enforcers in black robes. He hurriedly shouted, Your Excellencies, help me. These people are lawless. They actually robbed in broad daylight. Please uphold justice. The 2 law enforcers didn't move after hearing this and just watched coldly. The owner of the ring shouted again, Master, please help. This one is willing to give you half of the things in the space ring as a reward. One of the law enforcers heard this and sneered, Only half. The owner of the ring gritted his teeth and said with a bitter face, I'll give it all to you, Master. He knew that if he didn't get help soon, he would really be killed by these lawless people. Compared to his own life, what else was worth? The 2 law enforcers walked forward lazily, and the one who spoke earlier snorted, "Since you're so sensible, we'll help you." As soon as he finished speaking, the two of them attacked together. They were extremely ruthless, and as their energy surged, they directly blasted the robbers away. There were countless casualties in the air, and the air was instantly filled with a strong smell of blood. As soon as the two of them attacked, the surrounding cultivator instantly fell silent. The robbers who were lucky enough to survive immediately scattered like birds and beasts, not daring to stay any longer. Only the cultivator who had been robbed was left on the ground, lying there with blood all over his body. He looked extremely miserable. The law enforcers walked over, stretched out their hands, and sucked the space ring into their palms. After checking it with their divine sense, they frowned and said in disdain, "Poor bastard. That's all you have." After saying that, they even spat at the cultivator in disdain and swaggered away. "This person can only wait for death in the future," Jiao Yi sighed. The cultivator who had been robbed probably didn't have much to begin with, and now that he had lost his space ring, unless he could find a fleet to follow them out to sea as soon as possible, he would definitely end up like the robbers, sitting here and waiting for death. "It's so chaotic here," Yang Kai's face darkened. Ling Yinqin said, "When you're at the end of your rope, you can do anything." These people were also forced into a corner. Yang Kai was silent, knowing that Ling Yinqin had a point. Those robbers were already waiting for death, so what else in this world could they be afraid of? However, what made Yang Kai feel a little incredulous was that the law enforcers of Clear Sky City were also so dirty. To put it nicely, what happened just now was hitting someone while they were down, forcing them to repay their kindness, but to put it bluntly, it was robbery. From the looks of it, Clear Sky City was a place without law, and it was hard for Ling Yinqin and the others to live here for so long. This is the outer city district, so it's relatively chaotic. The inner city district is safer, so this kind of thing won't happen, Ling Yinqin explained. "Then, are you living in the outer city or the inner city?" Yang Kai asked. Jiao Yi replied, "The outer city, but we can move to the inner city in a few days." Their harvest this time was not small, enough to rent a good cave house in the inner city. Although the inner city's expenses were generally more expensive, it was safer, so some of the costs were still worth it. Ling Yinqin said, "Brother Yang, you've just arrived, so it's best to rent a cave house to live in first and slowly familiarize yourself with this place." "I was planning to do the same." Yang Kai nodded. He didn't know how long he would have to stay on Clear Sky Island, so he had to find a place to stay. Chapter 2378. This should be the place to rent a secluded home, right? Yang Kai stood in front of a large hall at the junction of the outer city and inner city, looking up before calling out to Liu Xianyun and walking in. The reason he was able to find this place so quickly was naturally thanks to Ling Yinqin and the others' guidance. Originally, Jiao Yi wanted to accompany him personally, but Yang Kai politely declined. Jiao Yi and the others had been out at sea for so long, so they definitely had their own matters to attend to. Moreover, it was just renting a secluded home, so it wasn't anything troublesome. Yang Kai believed that he could handle it himself. Before parting, Jiao Yi gave Yang Kai a communication bead and told him to call if he needed help. There were not many cultivators coming and going in this hall, but there were also quite a few of them. When Yang Kai arrived, there were already a few people waiting in front of him. They all seemed to be here to rent secluded homes. He stood to the side and watched silently for a while, quickly understanding the procedures. Half an hour later, when it was his turn, he walked up directly, threw a bag of source crystals on the table, and said to the cultivator in charge, "I want to rent a medium-sized secluded home for a year. Outer city or inner city?" The cultivator glanced up at Yang Kai and asked lightly. Yang Kai coldly snorted, "If it was an outer city secluded home, would I give you so many source crystals? Do you think I'm an idiot?" The person in charge was not angry and just grinned. He picked up the bag of source crystals and weighed it in his hand before putting it away. He pointed to the sand table beside him and said, "Choose for yourself." This sand table looked like a model of the entire Clear Sky City, except that it was countless times smaller. But every building was lifelike. There were two large areas of territory that were secluded homes. One of them was in the outer city and was relatively cheap, while the other was in the inner city and was relatively more expensive to rent. Most of the secluded homes had small flags outside, indicating that the secluded home had been rented out. Only a few secluded homes were still empty. Young Kai was just looking for a place to stay, so he did not have many requirements for the quality of the spirit purifying array or the amount of world energy in the secluded home. So, he just glanced at the sand table and pointed to a secluded home, this one. The person in charge glanced over and tossed a token towards Young Kai, not even bothering to raise his head as he said, "This is a restriction token, keep it for yourself. You are not allowed to sublet it or replace the spirit purifying array at will. If you are found to have done so, you will be killed without mercy." Young Kai caught the token. After a brief inspection, he put it away and left with Liu Xianyun. Another half an hour later, Young Kai and Liu Xianyun arrived in front of the secluded home. The secluded home in the inner city was located in a mountain range on the island. Many secluded homes of various sizes were built on this mountain range, and the overall environment was quite good. The world energy of the solitary void-sealed world. The world energy here was extremely rich. However, this world energy was mixed with infinite disruption force, so a cultivator could not absorb it at will. They could only absorb it after arranging a spirit purifying array. Depending on the quality of the spirit purifying array, the efficiency of a cultivator's cultivation varied greatly. But generally speaking, even with the highest grade spirit purifying array, a cultivator could only barely keep their cultivation from weakening while cultivating in this damned place. They could not improve at all. The medium-sized secluded home Young Kai rented was naturally equipped with an intermediate-grade spirit purifying array. He and Liu Xianyun entered the secluded home to investigate. They found that the secluded home was fairly large, with 3 rooms, one for alchemy, one for artifact refining, and even a living room. Compared to the secluded home Young Kai rented in Maplewood City, this was undoubtedly much better, but the price was about the same. Source crystals were extremely precious in the solitary void-sealed world, so the same price represented a different value. Source crystals of the same level were naturally more valuable in the solitary void-sealed world. "Junior sister, find a room for yourself," Young Kai said to Liu Xianyun. "What about you?" Liu Xianyun asked. "I'm going to familiarize myself with the environment and find that artifact refining grandmaster to repair Ling Yinqin's spirit purifying array." Liu Xianyun said, "Brother, you must be careful. I know. If you have nothing else to do, you can strengthen the various barriers in the secluded home. We may have to stay here for quite a while. Ian, come back early," Liu Xianyun said softly. Liu Xianyun whispered softly, blushing after saying this because she suddenly felt that she and Young Kai were like a married couple living together. Before the husband left home, the wife would be worried about him, and wouldn't she be in the role of the wife? Thinking of this, her cheeks immediately became hot, but when she raised her head again, Kai Yang had already disappeared. After making several turns on the streets of Clear Sky City and asking for directions several times, Young Kai finally arrived in front of a small alley. He turned his head and looked around with a strange expression on his face, muttering to himself, "He didn't walk, did he? Would that artifact refining grandmaster live here?" When he separated from Jiao Yi and the others earlier, Jiao Yi gave him a communication bead and secretly sent him a message, telling Young Kai that if he really wanted to repair Ling Yinqin's high-grade spirit purifying array, he should go to the inner city to find Grandmaster Sangde. On the entire Clear Sky Island, Grandmaster Sangde was the best artifact refiner. It was said that he had already faintly touched upon the mysteries of being an emperor artifact refiner. At least 80% of the high-grade spirit purifying arrays on Clear Sky Island were refined by Grandmaster Sangde. Since this person could refine a high-grade spirit purifying array, it shouldn't be a problem for him to repair it. Jiao Yi also knew the importance of the high-grade spirit purifying array to Ling Yinqin, so he secretly gave Young Kai some pointers. He also hoped that the spirit purifying array could be repaired. Young Kai wasn't familiar with Clear Sky City, but Grandmaster Sangde's reputation was great, so he just asked a few people on the way here before coming here. It was just that he couldn't believe that a guy who was about to become an emperor artifact refiner would actually live in a corner like this. But then he remembered that some masters had strange temperaments and always acted unexpectedly, so he wasn't surprised. He walked straight to the end of the alley and came to a large door. The door was open, and Yang Kai glanced inside and found a spacious courtyard. The courtyard was empty and spotless. There was a guy dressed like a boy sweeping the floor outside with a broom. Yang Kai stepped forward and cupped his fists. "Little brother, please." The boy seemed to be deaf and didn't pay any attention to Yang Kai at all. He only cared about sweeping the floor as if there was a stunning beauty lying there. Yang Kai coughed dryly and asked, "Excuse me, is this the place where Grandmaster Sangda cultivates?" Only then did the boy raise his head and say impatiently, "Since you've already found this place, what's the point of asking?" Hearing this, Yang Kai immediately knew that he had found the right place and hurriedly said, "Is Grandmaster free right now? I have something I need Grandmaster's help to repair. I don't know." "Who are you? Don't you know the rules?" "Rules? What rules?" Yang Kai looked confused. The boy looked Yang Kai up and down and sneered, "You didn't even inquire about the rules before coming here. You're really interesting. You want to see Grandmaster like this? Maybe in your next life." Yang Kai humbly asked for guidance. "Please give me a few pointers, little brother." The boy raised his head and looked at the sky, holding the broom in his hand as he stood there, twirling it between his fingers. This boy wanted something good. As soon as Yang Kai saw this boy's posture, he knew that he had done this kind of thing many times before. No wonder people said that the king of hell was easy to meet, but the little demons were difficult to deal with. This boy was an out-and-out little demon. Yang Kai suppressed the displeasure in his heart, took out a cloth bag from his space ring, and handed it to the other party, asking, "Can you speak now?" The boy weighed the cloth bag in his hand before smiling with satisfaction and pointing condescendingly at Yang Kai. "Grandmaster's time is precious. How could he have so much free time to bother with you people? However, Grandmaster is a kind and benevolent man. Seeing that you are trapped on Clear Sky Island and that life is not easy, he deliberately squeezed out some time to help you refine artifacts." Yang Kai curled his lips fiercely when he heard this. This boy spoke as if he wasn't trapped on Clear Sky Island. How shameless. "You'll remember." The boy's face was solemn as he quickly said, "Every month, Grandmaster will only open his door 3 times, and he will have 3 chances to help you refine artifacts. If you want to ask Grandmaster for help, it will depend on your own luck. Of course, in addition to these 3 times, Grandmaster will occasionally make an exception and open his door when he is in a good mood. Every time he opens his door, he will only refine artifacts for the first 10 people. If you are late, you won't get a chance. 3 chances, and 10 people each time?" Yang Kai frowned, thinking that this Grandmaster Sangda was quite arrogant, setting so many strange rules. However, Yang Kai understood why there was no one here today. Obviously, it was not time to open the door yet, or perhaps it had already been opened. "You're worth teaching, that's how it is." The boy smiled and nodded. "How old are you, little boy? How dare you talk to Master like this?" Yang Kai's face darkened as he reached out and knocked the boy. The boy's head shrank back, but he did not dodge. His cultivation was not high, only at the origin returning realm, so how could he avoid Yang Kai's blow? You dare hit me?" The boy took a few steps back, covering his head with his hands as he screamed. His eyes were red, and he looked very angry. "Hitting you is already going easy on you. If you dare to be so disrespectful again, I'll really beat you up." The boy seemed to be frightened. He worked for Grandmaster Sangda, and everyone who came here was polite to him, not daring to offend him in the slightest. This was the first time he had met someone who dared to teach him a lesson. Frightened, he turned his head and glanced at the courtyard, as if expecting Grandmaster Sangda to stand up for him, but there was no movement from inside. "What are you looking at? At such a young age, you already know how to intimidate others. What will you do when you grow up? I'm asking you a question, answer honestly." Yang Kai coldly snorted. The boy looked unhappy, but he did not say anything. "How many times has Grandmaster opened the door this month?" Yang Kai asked. "Twice." The boy snorted. When will the next time be? How would I know? Grandmaster opens the door at random. He will refine artifacts for you whenever he is in a good mood. Just you wait. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.